Welcome to the Long Take Review, a film podcast with one eye always on the Oscar race. I'm your host, Jen Bankard, and I'm here with the only other person who might be more upset that Dune Part 2 isn't coming out this year. It's PT McNiv. How's it going, PT? Sorry to start with a bummer.
Fear is the mind killer, but anticipation is the heart killer. And I am impatiently anticipating Dune Part 2, but we have to wait another few months. I'm doing well. Besides that, I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, and the news has sat with us long enough that I'm starting to process it. So if you listen to our last episode, we're referring to news that kind of torpedoed what we were trying to do. We tried to give our absurdly early Oscar predictions, but we ran into two significant problems. We talked for way too long, which is that's on brand, and only made it through about half the categories. We never even made it to any of the above the line categories. and then secondly, pretty soon after we stopped recording, probably the next day, Warner Brothers announced that Dune Part 2 was getting pushed to March 2024 instead of the originally planned November 2023. So we wanted to just give a big thank you to Greg, who very kindly, I think he enjoyed himself too, recorded a really funny pickup where he basically did the Arrested Development Ron Howard voice of correcting us every time we mentioned Dune, which was quite a lot. How are you feeling about those predictions that we made, PT?
Well, first, I want to add, in addition to second the thanking of Greg, I want to thank you for the audio production of the time travel woom in and out sounds of Greg's interruptions, because that really added to the episode and the effect of Greg's interruptions. I mean, it doesn't feel great that we really thought that Dune Part 2 was the front runner in most of those categories that we talked about last week, and now it's off the table. And, you know, as we will be discussing, because of the delay or extended amount of time between the last time we spoke and doing these above the line, or sort of the second half of it, we've gotten a lot more information from these various film festivals. So, you know, I would tweak it. I would make some changes, but, you know, that's why they were absurdly early. So besides the Dune disappointment, you know, I wouldn't go back. Let's look forward.
I like it. And yeah, I agree. It's probably for the best, not only because we sort of we will now avoid even bigger inaccuracies factoring in Dune, right? Now that we know we can't factor in Dune. But as you mentioned, a lot of the film festivals are either done or already underway. So Venice and Telluride just finished. And so we've got some indicators from those festivals. And then TIFF is about to end. I think it ends on Sunday. I think Sunday morning they're going to announce the audience winner, which, as we discussed in our last episode, is sort of the one of the big predictors or indicators for who's a front runner at this point in the Oscar race. So, you know, we are going to try to be more efficient with our time this time around, and just dive right into I think we have 10 big categories left, including, you know, the huge ones like director, best picture, all the acting categories. But if you would like more context and preamble, we've got it in spades in our other episode. So if you want to go back and listen to that, we basically have sort of like an Oscars 101 and kind of an overview of the Fall Film Festival season and sort of what that's all about. So that's got your kind of like information if you're new to this Oscar predictions game. But if you're ready to rumble with us, we're just going to get right into it. So we're going to kind of work our way up to Best Picture and start with editing. So PT, we'll start with you. How are we feeling about editing right now?
Well, I would say in the wake of the reaction to movies at those big festivals that you were just talking about, Venice and Telluride, I think this was at both of those. The movie I'm going to talk about was at both of those. There's a new sort of front runner, or a new movie that makes the triangle with Killers of the Flower Moon and Oppenheimer as a sort of perennial favorite across a lot of these categories. And that is Poor Things, the new Yorgos Lanthimos movie, which is getting rave reviews. we'll talk, I believe, later about, are we sure this could actually get momentum? But it right now sort of has the feeling of everybody loves it, everybody's really into it, but they're all like, I don't know if the Academy will go for this, which, maybe is true, and maybe there's too much there, and it's for sort of critics and festival types and indie heads exclusively. But that also kind of sounds like the Everything Everywhere All at Once and The Shape of Water thing of, oh yeah, this movie is, everyone likes it, but it's got these elements that are too weird or too out there. So all that's a preamble to say, if we went back and did do some of those below the line ones again, and even now at this point for going forward, you're going to hear a lot of these three movies: Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, Poor Things. Top three for editing right now in terms of the prognostications. Barring some change, barring some strange world where Killers of the Flower Moon comes out and everyone's like, actually, we don't like this. I think that one is in a prime position. Oppenheimer has already been out, and people are enjoying it, feel like, because it has all the multiple sort of timelines, it's cutting between these different stories, that the editing there will carry forward. And I'm trying to not learn too much about what happens in Poor Things, but it sounds like there's a wide scope of telling a lot of different parts of the story. So the editing seems like that will be very important.
Right. So typically movies that have a lot of editing or just like very noticeable editing tend to do really well in this category. So I agree that Oppenheimer, because it has all those cuts to Cillian Murphy and to the vastness of space, right? That's it's doing the sort of more abstract kind of Einsteinian montage thing. I think that's definitely in here, and there's no reason to there's nothing kicking that out at this point. And I think you're right. Killers of the Flower Moon, I'm optimistic about it in general. It's only premiered at Cannes, right? So like only a small subset of critics have seen it. But I feel like there was enough discussion of like, is this Martin Scorsese's greatest film since fill in the blank of like one of his greatest films, right? So, there's enough of that talk. There's a lot of people who were like, it's not the best, but it's still amazing. So I feel like the response was warm enough that it's just kind of simmering in the background, and that it's going to probably, when it comes out in a while, like more people see it, I think it's going to really take its place in the race. They just released another trailer. Did you see it?
I did. I chose to not watch it because
Okay.
I'm ready to just see it. If I see it in the theater, so be it. But I actually did see, when I went to the theater yesterday, they had the first trailer still. So I was glad to see that again on the big screen. But I'm ready to not see any more of that movie
It
and
does.
just go
You
in.
probably shouldn't. I watched it. I didn't regret watching it necessarily, but it does give more about the plot
Mm,
than
okay.
the previous one. Not by a lot, but like, and it's very implicit. It's sort of like, but it definitely seems to suggest something that is probably true in the plot. That, like, I don't know, if you want to go in fresh, it's not great, but it got me really pumped. So it's like, and I was already pretty primed for this movie. So,
Yeah,
um,
in terms of narratives, to go back to, for those of you who didn't listen to our last episode, the narratives of it all, I think, are really interesting. There's the potential narrative of Killers of the Flower Moon has been expected to do well at the Oscars now for like 2.5 years. And it was potentially going to come out last year, but it didn't. It was basically done, but it got held back, and it's being held back until the fall so it could get this rollout. That it's possible by the time it comes out, people are like, okay, like we've heard about this for a long time, we're kind of over it. But assuming that isn't the case, it has the juice, both in terms of the quality of the movie itself and also the people, the critics, the audiences are ready to be locked in and go along for the ride. It does seem like similar to similar to Oppenheimer, and to a little degree as well, similar to Barbie, where it's just sort of like, people like these movies. These movies have been very well received and are successful. They're running forward. And to add to what you said about editing, can frequently be a lot of editing. It's also a lot of editing in a movie that has got a lot of Academy Award momentum in the higher up categories too.
yeah, and I'd
So
say the three that you mentioned are expected at this point to be pretty big players across all categories, more or less, right? They're going to have some of the highest nomination counts, according to a lot of pundits. So I think and editing is usually paired with a Best Picture nomination. So it's like, or at least that's kind of a prerequisite or a bellwether of like if you're a best picture nominee and you have an editing nomination, like you're kind of more in the front of the pack. And so I think those having those three in there, especially since Poor Things won the Golden Lion at Venice, and which is like the big award there, and just so many people are sort of like, wow, this is a player now, whereas they weren't before, because Yorgos Lanthimos is like not the most accessible director. His stuff is typically very weird. And so that's the only thing that might, and we'll talk about this more later, I'm sure, though we've said that twice now, so maybe we should just talk about it now. But The Favorite did really well at the Oscars, but relative to other films that he's done, it's sort of the most palatable and least weird. It's still pretty weird, to be clear, but relatively, right? So if this one sounds like it's bonkers, and has like a ton of graphic sex in it, and is just like strange and fantastical, and like people are like, what am I watching? So depending on how ramped up that dial is, that to me is like, can it really be a really big across the board contender with lots of nominations, or is it like a relegated to like a couple key categories? Right now people are really high on it, so I think it deserves an editing spot just for that.
Yeah. And the question last year was, are hot dog fingers and dildo fights a bridge too far for voters in the Academy for Everything Everywhere? And it wasn't. But the type of sex scenes that at least they're describing seem like, oh yeah, maybe that'll be too much. That might turn enough people off that it doesn't get up to that level. Or the hype kind of peaks. We'll be touching upon, or at least I will be touching upon, one or two movies where we are post peak of their hype, and I think that they might hang on for some things. But if we had done a very Premature episode like a few months before now, they would have that sort of Poor Things, like everyone's saying this is going to be successful. But as time goes on, maybe it just sort of fades a little and cools off. So did you also have these three in your editing?
So wait, what are your other two?
I wanted to make sure we were on the same page with that. So my other two, and basically for all of these, I have like a solid 3 or 4, and then I kind of was like, I'll like just call a shot with sort of out of nowhere, having not seen these, with a bunch of kind of movies underneath that could be in. But the two I went with for editing are The Killer and Zone of Interest. Oh. And Zone of Interest is, I think, the biggest reach here. I'm sort of thinking that's the serious movie that is going to hold the momentum to get a few of these sort of tailwind ones. It'll get into Best Picture, spoiler, and I think we'll get some other ones underneath. It's supposed to be a very brutal watch, but the response from the people who saw it at Telluride, it had premiered at Cannes, but it was at Telluride as well, was very similarly of like, this movie is absolutely incredible. It is one of the most brutal things I've ever done, and I don't know if I can ever even think about it again. Which maybe isn't a great recipe for success and for getting people to sit through it, to give it award votes.
Especially since the Academy's been trending more towards crowd pleasers, at least for winners. I don't know about nominations, that isn't necessarily true. The other thing about Zone of Interest is like, I feel like it's too early to tell if it can push past the international feature bubble. You know what I mean? Because that's the question, is like, what makes it into the, like, what pushes past that and gets nominations elsewhere. So yeah, but if I say more, I'm spoiling in a future category discussion, I think. So I actually had two different ones in my last few spots. I had Ferrari, Michael Mann's Ferrari, which like has gotten mixed reviews. But the one thing people are like saying is, and agreeing upon universally, is the idea that the car chases, or the car, not chases, sorry, it's not a Bond movie. The races, Ferrari's race.
They're all chasing first place, Jen. So really, it is a car chase.
But yeah, basically the car racing scenes are really thrilling and really well done. So I think editing is a key component of that, most likely. That in order to kind of like make a race exciting and make it coherent. I know Amanda Dobbins on The Big Picture was like saying, well, I had some questions about how races work. but otherwise it was very legible and easy to follow as someone who doesn't get up at 4 a.m. to watch Formula One or something like that, right? So yeah, I think that's in there. And that's going to be like if the movie overall doesn't do that well at the Oscars, I feel like this is a viable category for it, as like one of its few nominations. And then the other one I had was Air, which I think way back when Greg and I did our review of Air, we sort of concluded that at that point in the year, because it was so early, it had a chance, but that it was starting at the middle of the pack and would get slowly drop down, down, down until it kind of got squeezed out of contention. But that was before the strike. So I feel like now that's a lot of things, like Dune, are getting pushed to next year, and the field gets a little thinner. I think there's room for something like Air to sort of sneak in and surprise everybody. And editing is, I think, is one of its strongest features. So I think this is a place that it could just like sneak in and people would be like, huh, that movie. Okay. Um, even though it was a movie I enjoyed a great deal, but I feel like and also like just the Ben Affleck, Matt Damon factor. And I think during the strike, they've earned a lot of goodwill. Thinking about external narratives, like they've there was a news story going around that was like they offered to pay all of Jimmy Kimmel's staff so they could resume the show, or something like that, right? Like they wouldn't be breaking the strike agreement, but and people like them generally. So that's definitely just for editing. I'm not willing to put that Air in many other categories, but that's one I think could be the random, because usually editing has one movie that's not really in the conversation otherwise.
That's true. Where it's like, oh, sure, okay. Ferrari was my sixth. I had that in sixth place. I think that I was like, I want to try to zag a little bit, and I moved Zone of Interest up. I think that Ferrari makes a lot of sense there. I also think there are a few movies that are I don't want to say fading. That's not fair, but Maestro I feel like is fading a little bit because people were like, I don't know about Maestro when it premiered from Venice. But if people are like, no, I like it, like the general public and more critics like it when it comes out, that could potentially be one of those movies that just gets swept up on the tails if it is well assembled and the editing is good to very good or even great.
And then that have a lot of music in the story do well,
because then the editing is usually cut to the music, and that could be very rewarding.
Yeah, I had that as one of my runner-ups.
Nice.
Question mark.
And then similarly, or just I guess sort of the opposite of that is because it's gotten so much of a bump after its premiere, maybe The Holdovers makes it up here, just because if The Holdovers gets, we got Pain-mentum and people are just really into Alexander Payne's new movie, maybe that ends up getting one of these bottom two slots down here. And then there's some question marks we just don't know about, which is The Color Purple and my beloved Napoleon, which probably isn't going to go anywhere. And it doesn't seem like there's a lot of excitement for The Color Purple below the lines outside of the music component, but in the sort of more technical side. But maybe The Color Purple is incredible and everybody is excited and it sort of gets in there.
Yeah. I think for those two, I feel like at best, and we should move on to another category because now we're talking about other things, but at best, it's going to do what West Side Story did, but West Side Story had a Steven Spielberg factor. And so I feel like the comp might not be apt necessarily, but so it might not even make it that far. But, I feel like Color Purple could easily be one of those movies that just comes and goes and no one talks about.
It could end up on This Had Oscar Buzz, where it was like, oh yeah, that was a movie everyone thought would be good, and then no one cared.
Right. And that's not to say I don't think it's going to be good. The trailer looks good. Like, it looks perfectly fine. Like, it's going to be, a good adaptation or, and have good music and good performances. But, it just in terms of Oscar buzz, I don't know. I'm questioning it. But yeah, all right. So cinematography, a somewhat similar category because it is, it leans more craft, but oftentimes is tied to the best picture narrative.
Yes, and I want to. I'll let you go first twice in a row, but I'm just going to say this. I put my list together, pieced together at different times, and I'm only realizing it now. I chose the same 5 movies as I did for editing.
Oh,
So boom, I'm just gonna bam
whoa.
put that out there. Done.
Nice, nice. And that, I mean, that's fair. That's because, as I was saying, like these are two categories that often, unlike other crafty categories or more technical categories, they kind of have more of a link to the bigger categories. So I had the same big three: Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, Poor Things. But then I had Maestro and Saltburn. Now I think Saltburn's stock in general has gone down after people saw it at Telluride, right? I think it was at Telluride.
Mhm.
And it just, the word I keep hearing is polarizing, where it's like, and it's, that's no surprise because the same thing happened to Promising Young Woman, Emerald Fennell's last film, where people either loved it or were very skeptical of it. So I think that means that Saltburn doesn't really have a lot of, it's like, it's not, it's, I took it out of my short list for like bigger categories. But the one thing I keep hearing is that it looks beautiful, and just like the shot compositions and the like exteriors of the estate, and like that, the stuff, kind of the stuff that we've seen in stills that have circulated and in the trailer, that is just like visually very striking. And so for that reason, I still have it in here. I took it out of a lot of other categories, but I left it in here. um
Yeah,
yeah.
I had it 6. It was right there at the on the outside looking in, and I also had Maestro and Ferrari for as reasons previously discussed, and I also had for my last honorable mention Past Lives, which is the movie that I was thinking of earlier. Of if we did this a couple months ago, it would be like, well, Past Lives, but
Right.
it's
Now
just
it's not.
kind of faded away from memory.
Which
I'm
makes me
hoping it
so
sort of makes a
sad.
comeback, but I don't know if with all the more showy movies that are out there and have a good shot here, that there's a really good chance it could get there.
Yeah,
But
I think if I were nominating films, Past Lives would be in here, because I think for so many of the shots are so beautifully composed, and for a movie that is so quiet a lot of the time, it has to really lean on it. Like, the cinematography becomes even more important in terms of the storytelling, and I think it really does that well. So yeah, but I don't think it really has a chance at this point,
this
unless
is a
unless there's like a renewal in its buzz, or like some kind of narrative that happens and it gets swept up.
which sort of feels like that would only happen if a lot of these movies come out and people are like, I do not like them. I'm against the movies, and so they go back to the old one. I will say, listeners can hear me attempt to strong arm Jen slightly, but at some point we should do an episode leading up to the Oscars on what we want, like what we would pick, not what we think will win, but just what would be our categories, what would
Yeah,
be our
no, we should do
winners.
our own long take review awards. Lots of podcasts
Yes,
do that.
the longies.
Let's workshop
Yeah,
that.
okay, we'll have to work on that.
But the other one I had on here with a question mark was The Bike Riders, which wasn't really on my radar, but premiered at, I believe, I'm gonna get it wrong now. It premiered at one of these festivals that happened recently, and a trailer came out, which I watched. Did you watch the trailer for this?
I did not see the trailer for it.
Okay,
I didn't know
so
actually the trailer was available online.
it is a lot of it shot in black and white, if not all of it. I'm actually not certain about that, but like the trailer, I believe, is in black and white, or at least partially. And then it's adapted from a photograph book. So I feel like, to me, I'm like, like, and from seeing the trailer, it looks really pretty, and it does have that sort of like James Dean kind of Americana sort of like feel to it. And I feel like there's probably people are probably kind of hungry for that. The In terms of the story, it basically looks like Sons of Anarchy crossed with The Outsiders, um, because it's about a motorcycle gang in like the 50s or 60s. There's lots of like greased hair and leather jackets and whatnot, and it looks like there's like infighting and organized crime, and like, or actually a lot of critics, I think, compared it to, they were like, Goodfellas but with motorcycles. that's got your attention, I
I
think. So
mean, I'm not against that in any way.
it has Austin Butler, um, Tom Hardy, Jodie Comer, with apparently a really ridiculous Chicago accent. Um, that's already, there's already discourse around it in the movie critic community. But yeah, so this one I feel like could be a sleeper. The response to it, some people were really into it. Other people were sort of like, it was pretty, but like it was sort of like it's nothing. It's not the story's not innovating or anything like that. It's sort of what you would expect it to be. And so unclear if it like actually breaks into any categories. But I feel like cinematography would be a good one.
And cinematography has that somewhat of a reputation of within the category they will go a little off the script of what the rest of the trends are across the awards. Like last year, Empire of Light and Bardo both got nominations here, even though those movies had completely dissipated in the rest of
Right.
the
Right.
conversation.
Yeah. There's usually always one where people are like, "Oh, I thought no one liked that movie," and it still makes it in. So yeah. But and the other thing I've heard across multiple sources is that Austin Butler is being shot very purposely to be handsome, and that this is causing a stir. So like,
And his handsomeness will not be detracted by his uglifying in Dune Part 2.
right.
So the runway is clear for just
Yes.
everyone to flock to the theater to see Austin Butler. I will just also note that it's Bike Riders is directed by Jeff Nichols, who
Oh yeah.
directed Take Shelter, Mud, Midnight Special, and Loving. Midnight Special and Loving coming out the same year is absolutely wild. And he hasn't done a movie since then. It's been 7 years that he's been working. I think a lot of that time was trying to get this made. So
Yeah. So that's another one that I think before the film festival season started, I did not really have on my radar. I had heard it mentioned, but I was like, I don't know what that is. And now I'm like, oh, it's at least on the board. But yeah. So next we have original screenplay, which there was major news for this just yesterday. I want to say it was very recent. Barbie announced that it is campaigning in original screenplay as opposed to adapted. I had originally had it adapted.
and the people listening may not grasp the level of nerdiness with which this type of news being important
What are you
gets
talking about?
to.
This is huge.
Big news, breaking news. But the it's because there are these esoteric rules about any movie or any screenplay that's based on a pre-existing material is adapted. So any sequel, even if it's like a totally new story, but it's a sequel because it's adapting the characters from the previous one, goes into adapted. There have been times when, we found out that there was a short play that was produced of this story, and we got it we wanted to nominate it or campaign for it in original. You can't do that. It's got to go and adapted. So the question was, is a movie that's based on a product that has existed for 50, 60 years, however long, is that like, is that something that is existing? Is that an existing story or narrative? Or is it just a property and an IP and switching it? That it was very unclear. So they announced, the Warner Brothers announced they were going to campaign an original. I assume they cleared it with the Academy, that the Academy is not going to come in a couple months and be like,
And
actually,
just put them in
no.
adapted.
Yeah. Or like all your votes for original will not count and it's just not going to get nominated. But yeah, it's very interesting to a very nerdy selection of people who care about this sort of thing.
Well, so I had assumed, because this wasn't like a foregone conclusion that it would be an adapted. There were critics who were saying like it's kind of up in the air because there isn't necessarily a lot of precedent in terms of movies that are based on, like you said, are based on products or IP that sort of make it this far. And so, like, because I think people were talking about the Lego movie. The Lego movie was an adapted because it was like it's based on toys that pre-existed, but then it never actually got nominated, I think. And so it's like we'll never. It was the conclusion was sort of like we'll never know. We'll never know what would have happened with the Lego movie. But I think for me, in the opening credits, it says based on the toy or something like that. Like it has a thing that's like this is based on Barbie the toy. So that was sort of like, oh, that's language that to me signals we acknowledge that there's not literary source material that this is based on. Um, but I think this is actually very significant in terms of how the overall campaign for Barbie is going to go, because to me, them staking a claim in original screenplay is them being like, no, this is deserving of being in the conversation for Oscars, because Greta Gerwig did an amazing thing. She really innovated. She did something different. She was bold. And I think that the original screenplay categorization is part of that narrative that they're probably trying to build for it not just being a blockbuster and making $1 billion, but that it actually is like artistically valuable enough to be in the Oscars conversation. So I think this is a pretty big deal. And also I think they also are thinking, oh, Dune, like the other blockbusters are not coming out this year. So here's our chance. Let's get in there. And so I think Barbie in general at this point has its stock has gone up in terms of Oscars nominations.
Yeah, I mean, Oppenheimer is the other blockbuster now, which
Yeah,
is
which is so
not
weird.
not really what was expected. But yeah, no, it's a really great point that it's trying to send the message. This is a Greta Gerwig movie. This is not a toy movie.
Yeah. Yep. Even though they're planning $1 billion other toy movies as a result. So Mattel or whatever is not, and Hasbro, they're not thinking of it that way at all. They're definitely trying to capitalize on this.
GoBots for Best Picture 2031.
Well, there's a Rock'em Sock'em Robots movie that they listed, right? I think there's a whole list of, yeah, go Google it.
That's an adapted screenplay because it's based on Real Steel, the Hugh Jackman movie.
That's right. Oh, I forgot about that movie. Anyway, so original screenplay. So yeah, this kind of shook things up a little bit for me. I have Past Lives, because I think even if Past Lives overall momentum fades, I think it's still the minimum. It's still starting at a screenplay nomination, just because people are not going to forget. Like the writers are not going to forget about Past Lives, even if everybody else does. I have The Holdovers, just because most of the positive comments about that film have been about the story and sort of the performances, which we'll get into later. But like, you know, people are generally positive about the writing, and that feels like, you know, original screenplay is often like the cool kids club, where it's like the movies that are kind of offbeat, like, you know, the Licorice Pizzas and the like the movies that are like, oh, we like these because they're cool and artsy. They usually those are the types of films that typically end up in original screenplay, and so I think The Holdovers could be in that category. I have Anatomy of a Fall, just because people are saying that's so tightly constructed as a thriller and a mystery, and you know, so that's, if that really has as big a push as I think it's going to, past, again, breaking past that international feature bubble, I think it could end up in here. I do have Barbie. I probably should have led with that since we spent like 10 minutes talking about Barbie first. But I think it was such a late addition that I just put it in the empty spot I had. Barbie, yeah, these aren't necessarily ranked in order of like strongest to least strong. Yeah, Barbie, I think if it's in original, I think it has actually it would have had a harder time winning in adapted probably. Now it's like, oh, this is like, it's because it's the big movie that's now in here, as opposed to all these other small movies that are going to be cowering in its wake. And then I also, my last spot was really hard. I have Maestro right now because I feel like it's a biopics with original screenplays. I feel like people respect that. That's not based on a biography or like some pre-existing novel. So I don't know that. Yeah, but that's very much with like an asterisk of like, if that movie does win well overall, it could be in here. But yeah,
I had the same top four as you, or the same initial four. I wouldn't say top, but for the, you know, you said all the reasons why. But yeah, Barbie, Past Lives, Holdovers, Anatomy of a Fall, and similarly was like, I think this is true for a lot of the categories. If I feel really good about these, but I don't know now. It's just a coin flip. I kept Saltburn in, even though, like you said, it had a real kind of divisive reaction. But I think Emerald Fennell has, you know, the
right. She's been
her lovers
in this category. She won in this category.
She won. Yeah, was it? It was original, right?
I believe it was.
So yeah, she's won before, and that, you know, people may want to go back and vote for her again. I had like my long shot wish, which I don't think will happen. I want Miyazaki to get nominated for The Boy and the Heron.
Oh, that would be
I
great.
don't foresee that being a thing
I don't think that's
that
happening.
they would do. But they have nominated animated screenplays before, but it's rare. And my guess is that as much as people are like, Poor Things might be just too weird for the Academy voters, like Miyazaki movies are also generally pretty weird. And the trailer that came out for The Boy and the Heron
I was just
doesn't make it
listening
look not
to
weird.
I was just listening to Little Go Men, which is a great podcast. It's the Vanity Fair award season podcast. And most, if not all of them, were like, good for, like, we love that people love Miyazaki, but we had no idea what was going on in that movie.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So I feel like there's going to be a lot of that, which might hold it back in some cases beyond animated feature. But
yeah,
I
so
think
that's my sort of like, I wanted to put that in 5, but I was like, that's not going to happen.
I wanted to
So,
put Asteroid City in 5, and I'm like, that's not going to happen.
yeah,
Because somehow Wes Anderson doesn't exist according to the Academy.
yeah. The other one I want to just have on the table as an honorable mention is May December,
Yeah, I had that
which
one too.
I feel like hasn't been that much talking about it like recently, but that's partially, I don't think it was at any of these recent festivals.
It was at
Cannes,
I believe so. It was
but
at one of the earlier festivals
right,
in the spring. But
right.
yeah, that one also might be too weird in a very different way, because as I think we've talked about before, the plot is about a woman who starts a relationship with a minor and then marries them. And even though everyone's saying that it's actually very campy and somehow finds the humor, and like the screenplay is very sophisticated, I feel like that might still be a stumbling block for a lot of voters. And so unless it has like a big campaign, which I don't think it will because it's Netflix and they have other things that they're going to probably throw their weight behind. So unless it has some sort of momentum, otherwise, I feel like it's kind of fading in the
Maestro has to really flop for May
That's
December to get a lot of attention.
That's a good point. Yeah. I also had Fair Play, which I know is not a movie you enjoyed, but I did. But I never thought that it was Oscar worthy necessarily. Like I wasn't going that far, but there were so many people who were like, that screenplay, that say what you will about the movie, but that screenplay is tight. So like, I don't know. That's also a wild card one that when it comes out on Netflix, because it hasn't come out on Netflix yet. Again, like Netflix, I don't think is going to campaign on behalf of that movie, but I think it's one of those ones where like All Quiet on the Western Front, where if suddenly there's interest in it when it comes out, they'll be like, oh right, we actually also love this movie. Go Oscars, right? Which is sort of what happened with All Quiet on the Western Front. They didn't plan on campaigning for that, and then it sort of had an organic sweep. But yeah, so that was the other one that was on my list of like potential spoiler. But I'm not hopeful about any of those, to be honest.
No. Yeah, they're all clamoring. At this point, they're all clamoring for that last spot, it seems like. And of course, because this is very premature, hence the name. But this all may change over time, but for now.
Yeah. And at this point in the season, based on past precedent, whoever is emerges from Fall Film Festival season as the front runner usually doesn't actually stay the front runner. Like, right. I think this has happened several times now, where like at this time of the year, people were like, "Yeah, The Fabelmans, best picture winner, The Fabelmans," and then it quickly kind of dropped off after that. So,
but certainly in this category, it was original screenplay for sure for Tony Kushner,
yep.
and Steven Spielberg. Like that will be perfect. We can reward them for it. But maybe we should move on to best adapted screenplay, which has I think so is how did a little less wide open is what I would say.
Yeah, how did Barbie leaving this category shake things up at all for you, or was it just sort of easy?
Yes, because instead of having a fifth pick that I thought was like pretty solid right now in the position, that moved up to the fourth pick or whatever, moved into the top 4, and my fifth one was pretty open. I'm kind of doing a wild card pick here, but I think we've been saying it. We've been saying it all night. The top three
Yes,
are all here because they're
the
all
holy
adapted.
movie trinity,
Yeah, the holy trinity of
or unholy, considering the plots of all these three
yeah,
of these
correct.
movies.
That's true. The cursed trilogy of premature Oscar picks as of mid September 2023. So Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things, as of now, feel like pretty locked in, and those are in a position. I had that fifth that moved to fourth was Zone of Interest because people have said it's just so well like structured and so taught in the way that it's
Right,
doing it, an adaptation of a Martin Amis book, and Martin Amis just passed away,
right.
so there's something in there
But I would say
as
even
well.
barring that, even if he were still alive, I feel like his since he's a big name novelist, those usually anytime there's like some even semi-famous literary work involved in the adaptation, that is usually increases its chances. Like this category really favors the sort of like you took an amazing work of literature and somehow turned it into a good movie. We would like to give you a nomination. So I think that's also sort of why it gets in here.
Right. You took something written by someone whose name sounds good to us, even though we have not read any of those books. But we really appreciate that you brought it to us. And
Right.
it was also
They're on college syllabi everywhere.
right. Yes, banned in probably like a dozen states.
Oh, that's true.
But we've it's also because it's written by Jonathan Glazer, who directed it, and the directing is supposed to be incredible, but directing is going to be a tough fight. It's possible that this is where it's like, well, we could give him a screenplay nomination, and maybe even he could make a run for the actual award. But so I think I'm pretty solid in with that at number 4. And then 5 is a lot of wild cards of movies I haven't seen. So I went a little bit on name recognition and a little bit like wanting to at least somewhere in our conversation take a real long shot. And I have Sofia Coppola for Priscilla in my 5th spot.
That was on my short list. I ultimately took it out. But yes, I think again that's one of those movies where I think some people are saying it's the best since Lost in Translation, or Sofia Coppola is back. Like I'm hearing a lot of that narrative, and I'm like, she left? Okay, like I don't know, like I mean, I guess she's sort of been a little quieter recently, but like but I think there for every person who's saying that, there's another person being like, it's fine. so I'm not sure how well overall this movie would do, but I do think if it were to get only one nomination, it would be in this category, right? To be like, Sofia Coppola, we see you over there, we still like you, and so and like good job writing a movie about Elvis that wasn't Elvis. So that might be the token prize for doing that. I don't know. I saw the trailer for this. Did you watch it?
Apparently, I just missed all these
You just
trailers.
missed all
No,
these trailers.
I don't.
Anytime something premieres at a film festival, it's very likely a trailer drops. So
I see.
that's why
This is
I
my
was
this
just
is
kind
my
of like
problem.
following this. But it definitely looks like a Sofia Coppola movie. In terms of the style and the tone, and it's very very focused on the interiority of Priscilla Presley, and so I think it has potential. I was intrigued. I was like, I was originally on my why are we doing another Elvis movie soapbox, but now I'm kind of like, oh, I get it. Like I get we're providing this other perspective, because it seems like Elvis is like not, especially Elvis as a musical performer, is very much not what the movie's about. It's more about their relationship and her kind of coming of age in this very strange set of circumstances where she's like 14 and meets Elvis, and then they get married, and she's like locked up in Graceland for a while, and like it's weird. So I was I was more interested than I was before after seeing the trailer.
Hot off saying that May December may be too awkward for people
Oh,
who want to
true,
watch
but
it.
this is Elvis,
Here
so
comes Priscilla. What if Elvis did that? Which he did. But what if we watched it in a movie? Yeah. So, and I have, I won't name it because you need to give your list, but I've got a successful movie that feels like a long shot, but could, I think, easily not easily, but I could have easily put it in that 5th spot instead of Priscilla. And then it's a bunch of movies that I haven't seen, haven't heard much about, any of which could rise to prominence and feel like an inevitable nomination once they become more well known. So what did you have in this category?
So I had 4 out of the 5 were the same as yours.
We're on
The
point.
big 3 in zone of interest. But then my 5th spot was for a movie that really has come out of left field. I had not even heard anyone utter its name until TIFF, and that is American Fiction. And that is, I can't remember who the director is now, but it's starring Jeffrey Wright. And it's about an African American literature professor or English professor, whose name I thought was Thelonious Monk, but it's not. I was like, wait, there's a movie about Thelonious Monk. Sign me up. And then it turned out I went back and reread it, and it's like that's his nickname. Is like he's Thelonious something, and then Monk is like his nickname. So it's not about the jazz musician Thelonious Monk. It's about someone else. But apparently, this is just like blowing people away, and especially Jeffrey Wright, his performance. And so, which again, like this was not on my preview radar at all. So then I was like, oh, and I think it's also adapted from a novel.
It is the
That was the thing.
Percival Everett novel, USC shout out.
Oh, nice.
Former chair of the English department at USC.
Oh,
Percival
I did
Everett.
not know that. Okay. There you go.
Yeah, it's interesting. This was one of those movies I was saying could emerge and become the movie that is like, well, of course. But it's funny when you were introducing it as wasn't on my radar before. I hadn't really heard about it till the festivals kicked off. I thought you were going to say what ended up in my 6th spot, which is All of Us Strangers.
Oh yeah, but we had mentioned that already.
We had, but I feel like I kind of thought it was like, okay, whatever. It's a movie with Hot Priest. But at the festivals, people were like, no, this is great. Like this works really well.
And like people just bawling in the theater.
Open sobs throughout the theater. So
except for Richard Lawson, whose heart is made of stone.
Well,
apparently.
I mean, listen, I'm appreciative of Richard Lawson as a curmudgeonly force who seems to react like an old man, even though I think he's at least a decade younger than me.
He's also from Massachusetts. He's from Massachusetts, so
it tracks. It tracks. It makes sense. So I think there's some spots where could there be like a more positive reaction to Ferrari outside of a festival, and Michael Mann gets. Actually, I think Michael Mann didn't have a hand in writing it, but could there be a desire to reward that? I mentioned it a couple times. I think maybe we both have, but The Killer, which is the new David Fincher movie, again, like if that starts to really pick up some momentum, could that get into this spot?
I would have thought that before, but the consensus critically now seems to be people are very positive on the movie, but they're like it's more of a commercial thriller, like a mainstream thriller, rather than an Oscar player or award. It's not like awards worthy necessarily because it's like very well done and everyone enjoyed seeing it, but it's not innovating in the genre enough. Or really even they were like, it's a David Fincher movie, period. Like very matter of factly, like it's everything you would want and expect from a David Fincher movie, but it's not really doing anything else. Which I'm like, oh, come on. Like, his movies are good. So like, what's the big deal? But yeah, so the Ann Thompson from IndieWire was the most recent person I heard saying like, oh, I'm really like, it's really fantastic. I don't think it's an awards player. So, that's why I originally had that in a lot more places and sort of took it out after kind of hearing the reactions to it.
That's fair. But it, again, makes me wonder does it come out? Is it popular? People like it. Is this the movie that Netflix decides, okay, like we're going to sort of push it and get, even though it is that sort, it is that kind of standard issue, maybe more of a girl with a dragon tattoo than a,
apparently
Gone
David
Girl.
Fincher says he was inspired by Haywire, also a movie with Michael Fassbender, which I thought was good. That's a Steven Soderbergh movie.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's much more mainstream entertainment as opposed to artsy and awardsy. But you never know.
Yeah. True. And then speaking of mainstream entertainment, that could it get momentum if no one else takes the spot Across the Spider-Verse? Could it get in there if there is some Spider-Verse momentum?
Yeah, I think that's possible. I feel like if that were, because the Into the Spider-Verse didn't break out of animated.
No, but there was like some hope. I think there was a little window
Oh,
that got campaigned,
yeah. I
but
don't
it
know.
didn't happen.
I'm not gonna hold my breath for
No,
something like that. I feel like animation, something being blockbuster thriller-y is a much smaller hurdle than something being animated, unfortunately.
yeah.
So yeah,
Should we move on to performances?
we should. There's a lot going on here now. Turns out. Let's start with, I guess, supporting actress. I have such a long list here. Do you want to go first?
No, I just went first.
You
You
do?
you
Oh, okay,
go
that's right.
ahead.
That's right. All right, fine. So Lily Gladstone, constant mainstay in this category, current frontrunner.
Mhm.
Um, nothing I've seen or heard makes me question that at all. Emily Blunt, I think, because like people are sort of like Oppenheimer's still here, Oppenheimer's still, you know, in the
We
game.
still out here.
Yeah. So I think Emily Blunt is still in the conversation.
We still out here. We still don't like your tone.
We still. And then from the holdovers, a standout performance that people keep talking. I mean, people keep talking about the three main characters, all Paul Giamatti, a young man who I guess was like found at the school that they shot the movie at. Like he was not an actor previously, so he's like a new discovery. People are really raving about him, but in supporting actress, people are like Joy Randolph. Let's do it. So I have like she's pretty high up on my list. She plays a cafeteria attendant, I believe, or someone who works at on the staff of this boarding school that they're trapped in for some kind of holiday situation. Have you seen the trailer for this? This is the whole
Yes.
episode. It's gonna be me asking you, have you seen trailers?
Yes. Yeah. This is
Okay.
this is the pop quiz of trailers. But yeah, this is the one that was on the film of connected to Oppenheimer. So
Oh,
I
that's
saw it
right.
twice.
All right. Which
It
I
looks
didn't.
great.
They didn't. Mine didn't. My screening didn't have any trailers. So, um, but I did. I feel like I have seen it. I probably just watched it at home. So yeah, so that's those three I feel pretty good about. That like I'm still reserving the right to change them at any moment, but I think those are the three that I'm feeling pretty good about. And then I have Penelope Cruz because people are not too high on Ferrari, but they are in love with Penelope Cruz in this movie. So it's one of those things where it's like meh to the movie, but Penelope Cruz, like that's the consistent thing I keep hearing. And apparently premiering this movie in Venice, not a great idea because all of the Italian people hated it. Because well, and I don't know why that would be. We're just getting a bunch of American actors to play Italian people with terrible accents. I didn't actually tell you this off mic, and I meant to, but one of my favorite Oscars podcasts, Mike and Oscar, they gave me a shout out because I had messaged them in response to one of their Instagram stories that was about Adam Driver at Venice, and I just said, "Why do we keep asking him to do Italian accents?" And they're like, "We don't know." Like they were like, "This is a very good question. We don't know." And so I think that the accent work is going to be an issue with this movie. It's going to be House of Gucci Part 2, I think. But I think usually in the supporting actress category in particular, it's like being in a movie that people are meh about is not a barrier to entry, where it's like performances can get singled out and put in here. So I think and like Penelope Cruz, she ruined my Oscar pool a few years ago with Parallel Mothers because of the last minute I panic switched my prediction to her because there was
I was going
rumbling.
to say, don't sleep on the Academy just loving Penelope Cruz,
Yeah, that's
and
the thing.
in being like, yes, we want to reward her. It does sort of feel like they've wanted to give her a second Oscar for a little while, and obviously, part of that,
What was her
there's
first one for?
oh no, was
Sorry.
it for Vicky Cristina? No, Voltaire, maybe? Is that the name of the movie?
Okay. Was it a Pedro Almodovar movie?
I believe it was. Was she also in Woody Allen movies, though? Am I making that up?
No.
She
I mean,
was. It
she's
was
been
Vicky Cristina Barcelona,
okay, there we go.
which is a Woody Allen movie. But she was nominated for Voltaire and Parallel Mothers, which are
Right.
both
And I
Almodovar
do
movies.
feel like
And Nine.
she
Let's not forget Nine,
Oh, yeah.
the Rob
Parallel
Marshall
Mothers was really
musical.
good. That was the other thing that made me make this huge Oscar prediction mistake is that I watched Parallel Mothers the week before the Oscars and I was like, she's all over this. This is amazing. So like it was not good.
Penelope Cruz being nominated for 9 is the direct parallel to Penelope Cruz being nominated for Ferrari. Of here's a movie like this could be good. It's not. But you know who is good? And then she gets nominated.
Right, yeah. And I think, a lot of the big narrative is that the Academy is getting more international in its membership, and I feel like she's definitely riding the coattails of that, like because people, around the world love her, and she's very European. So like, and I've actually heard, I can't remember who it was. I heard a critic saying all the American actors don't have good Italian accents, but since Penelope Cruz is already from Spain, right? Because she's from Spain. I want to say, okay. She already has an accent, and therefore it's more believable that she's Italian. And I was like, that statement is really problematic. And there's a lot of logic in there that's not, I don't know, but it sort of makes sense. So yeah, she's the standout from that movie, and then I have Sandra Hüller. So in Best Supporting Actress, because spoiler, I have her in 2 places. So Best Supporting Actress would be for Zone of Interest, which I hear not only is amazing and soul crushing, etc., but that she is amazing in it. So I think it's definitely possible, and would be so the Oscars for one actress who's no one in America has heard of to suddenly be nominated in 2 different acting categories.
I almost predicted a one nomination in supporting, one nomination in lead for someone totally different, but we'll get to that. We'll get there. Okay. So I like it, but I like the call.
Yeah. I think it's going to happen. It's just a matter of who and where, and like, yeah. I have a feeling.
It's always in there. That was the 5, right?
That was the 5. Do we have any overlap?
We do. Well, we do. It's the top 2. Okay. Lily Gladstone and is it Davine Joy Randolph? Is that the pronunciation?
I believe so.
Okay. It's my fault for not looking that up. In the holdovers, and Lily Gladstone is that the Laura Dern, like just from day one all the way through the award is going to get the award? Is eventually going to fall? It feels like when people have been a little bit like, let's calm down on Killers of the Flower Moon. Either maybe it won't be good, or maybe everyone will be over it by the time it gets to the actual voting and the awards. That if that's true, then people might feel comfortable coalescing around, but at least we'll give Lily Gladstone an Oscar, and that movie will get the 1 Oscar, and everyone will be okay with that. It'll be an Academy Award winning movie. We can walk away. Or it is this like powerhouse. It's one of the leads. It's in got a bunch of nominations, really vying for, maybe it still doesn't win that many others, but it seems to be in the running. Then it's let's get her on board. Like, let's just keep doing it. So she seems to be in a pretty good position to go forward and maybe, again, carrying it all the way. I had Emily Blunt in. I was trying to mix it up a little bit. So I was maybe overthinking this, that like by the time we get there with all the other performances that come out, maybe people will be like, you know what? Emily Blunt was great in that one scene and she did good in the other parts, but it's just not enough. It's not that much in the movie. So that she ends up sort of fading a little bit, especially when like support gets to coalesce around other Oppenheimer narratives will be out there. So maybe
but isn't it going to be really bad if Oppenheimer gets a ton of nominations, including a lot of acting ones? Because I think we're going to talk about actor in a minute and supporting actor. You know what I mean? Like, and then she doesn't.
Yes.
I feel like that's going to be a bad look.
It would be from the Academy,
right? The Oscars.
Would that ever happen?
I know.
So. But also, like, so here's what I'll say is I've slotted in from the same weekend. I put America Ferrera in, being like that will be the sort of blockbuster. That'll be the Barbie, sort of a Barbie coattails in the way that maybe Emily Blunt could be.
She does have the better Oscar reel because she has
the speech
monologue, yeah,
and is great, is really good in it, and people I think are really excited about it. And then I went with a couple of veterans in movies that, as we've already, well, one of them we've already discussed, the other one we haven't discussed, which is a bad sign. And it's Julianne Moore in May December and Jodie Foster in Nyad.
Yeah.
I kind of think that in thinking of what's the Netflix strategy going to be, it's going to be Maestro is the big push, and then we're just going to push the acting in Naiad and try to get I get
I can
spoilers
see it.
for future categories, that like we're going to push these people, these two performances, and that the momentum of it, of like, it's like, oh yeah, and where's Jodie Foster been? Like, we haven't nominated her in a long time, so this could be a chance to sort of bring her back. I don't know if
Did
there's a
she
lot
get
of
nominated for the Mauritanian, or was that a Golden Globe only? Do you
That's a
remember?
great, what a great question that I definitely know the answer
Sorry,
to.
yeah, I didn't expect you to know the answer to that off the top of your head, but
No,
sometimes
she
you
has not been
expect me.
nominated since she was nominated for Nell, Best Actress for
Oh,
Nell, and she was of course nominated Best Supporting Actress for Taxi Driver, and in between she won Best Actress twice for The Accused and Silence of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs. Yeah, okay.
So yeah, I don't know. Are people really going to be like, we want Jodie Foster to get a third
Right.
Academy
Here,
Award?
okay.
But they might be like, we want to nominate her if like the
Right, just
movie
because
has
they
not
like
been.
her.
Yeah, the movie has not been received particularly well, but people have really said really like the acting, and said the performances between the two main women in it are really strong. So
Yeah.
I went with that. I had well, I'm trying. I feel there's someone that you had that wasn't on my list. I had Penelope Cruz and I had Emily Blunt. Who was your fifth person?
Sandra Hüller.
Sandra Hüller, right? I thought she's not going to get nominated. She's going to be pushed just in actress.
Yeah. No,
So
no,
I
no.
didn't have
That
her
was
there.
definitely my big swing.
And then there's Taraji B. Henson and Danielle Brooks are both for The Color Purple, and they had a lot of buzz that has sort of faded. I don't know if it's faded just because the movie hasn't been seen yet, and so it's not being talked about as much. But if the movie connects and people really like it, they have there's a big entrance for them to come in.
Do we even know where that movie's premiering? That's the thing. Is like I haven't heard anyone talking about
that
it.
movie and Napoleon. There's like, well, I don't know what's happening. Like, are they just coming out? They have release dates, and it's like, maybe that's it. Maybe that's all that's going to happen.
Yeah, I just kind of took all Color Purple noms out of my list because I'm like, I don't think there's anything. I think it's gonna be the thing that people are like, oh wait, shouldn't we have nominated that movie?
Yeah.
Or like people just no one's gonna have seen it. This is what happened with West Side Story. West Side Story still got some nominations, including Best Picture, if I remember.
Oh yeah,
right?
There was a little window when people were like, actually, maybe West Side Story is going to win.
Right. But it also was like, oh, no one went to go see this movie, and now no one knows about it.
Right.
There was a period where people were like, oh, I guess this is just out. But so yeah, I feel like a very similar thing can happen to The Color Purple. I had Jodie Foster on my short list, but I originally didn't put her in because my thinking is the movie itself people don't seem to be that into it. I agree, they are into the acting performances, and I've actually heard a couple people say that they like Jodie Foster better than they like Annette Bening, but Annette Bening is overdue for an Oscar. So like, right. So my thing is like, I don't think the movie is strong enough to put them both in. And there's like also controversy around the real life figure, like the swimmer that the movie's about. I think, right?
Only because she lied. Only because maybe she lied about all the swimming. Maybe.
So that I feel like people are kind of dismissing that as a factor, but I feel like that could very easily become a factor. Yeah, so I just think there's only room for one of them probably to get like the lone nomination.
That may be. I wonder if the strike does continue to the point where Annette Bening and Jodie Foster are not able to campaign for it. Will that make it better or worse? Because you won't have Annette Bening trying to defend the person that she's representing, and then trying to like having to be like, I fully support everything.
Right. But she also can't do like the Glenn Close type tour.
Right.
Like, and it also, I need an Oscar.
It also makes you wonder, will they spend more time looking at the real person because they can't talk to Annette Bening? So they'll have more time
but I do feel like publicists probably would know enough not to put her in front of press.
You would think.
If there's already a sniff of controversy. But I don't know. I feel like this movie is tainted.
Yeah. My only counter argument. Yes, my only counter argument is I was sort of thinking about The Whale, where it was like people didn't like this movie, but you know what? They really like the acting in it. So and they like the people in it who are doing the acting. So that was my thinking. But both, Julianne Moore and Jodie Foster were also sort of the like, you know what? We like these people. We've given them awards before. Why not again? But I think it's somewhat dependent on actually seeing the movies and taking them in and having people watch them, which is anathema to everything we're doing tonight. But
Rosamund Pike was also on my short list of runner-ups because while people were kind of polarized about Saltburn itself, consistently people were saying Rosamund Pike is she's just having a great time. She's at her best performance since Gone Girl. So that's a possibility. And she did surprise. I remember one year with, I think this was Golden Globes, but not Oscars. With what's the old people hustling movie that she was in? I think that was a Netflix movie. Do you remember this?
uh,
Where she was like conning elderly people.
yes. Oh, I forget the name of it, but it's like I'm here for you or something like that,
Oh
or I
yeah,
care
something like
about
that.
you.
That sounds closer. Yeah.
You're like, no, no,
This is
maybe.
great. This is great podcasting.
I
Yeah,
care
and
a
I
lot. It's
think
called
she has been known to come out of nowhere. That's all I'm saying.
yes. It's called I
For
care a lot.
movies that people don't remember watching.
Right.
All right, we ready for supporting actor?
I think so.
Okay.
If we could ever be.
So my theme for this is actors that finally got out of the MCU.
Very nice.
Because I have Robert Downey Jr. and I think, until something bad happens with Oppenheimer, knock on wood, that doesn't until that campaign falls apart somehow, Robert Downey Jr. is just like steamrolling this, I think. Because even if you didn't get the movie, I don't know those people, but even if you were like, huh, Oppenheimer, I didn't get it, or it was boring, I fell asleep after an hour. I have talked to those people, and I continue not to understand them. Anyway,
You've cut them out of your life. They're no longer welcome.
I understand. It's a very certain particular type of movie.
Some
Anyway,
people have bad taste. It's fun.
that's so yeah, Robert Downey Jr., I think this is his category still to lose right now. But Mark Ruffalo, because Poor Things has sort of emerged as, above all, a bunch of other films that have premiered at these fall festivals, and people are just saying that his performance is just sparkling and he's hilarious, and that he's like actually a major component of the movie and really is part of what makes it work. And so I think if people are good with the movie and it gets a bunch of nominations, he's making it in here. And even if not, if the movie falls away and it doesn't hit in other categories, other than maybe one other one that we're going to talk about in a minute, like I think it could easily be a singled out performance to be like, well, we're not sure about the movie, but like we like him. So I have him in here, and then I also have Robert De Niro. It could be the Battle of the Roberts. I don't know. That's also possible.
Bobby versus Bobby.
Bobby, for Killers of the Flower Moon. We've talked about him in this movie before, so I feel like there's not a whole lot of explanation that's necessary there. And then I had Ryan Gosling, who I still think people who are like, I love Barbie, are gonna gravitate towards his performance, and we just want him at the Oscars, right? Assuming actors are going to the Oscars, that's a whole other thing. But like, or that there is an Oscar, it's a whole other thing. So those ones, I feel pretty good about those four right now. And then so my fifth spot I wasn't sure about, but I ended up with Willem Dafoe for Poor Things, and I'm betting big on Poor Things with my nominations right now. Which again could fall apart any day now, but I think this category especially recently, has a history of double nominations for one movie if that movie is doing really well. And so if Poor Things, originally I had Jesse Plemons in here because I was like, oh, maybe Killers of the Flower Moon is like it's like everybody gets nominated. But I feel like his performance is probably going to be a little bit more like Matt Damon in Oppenheimer, where people like appreciate him and they're happy to see him, but they're not going to give him any awards. Because he's sort of like based on the trailers, he seems like kind of the comic relief in some ways, or like that he's not, just the nature of his role is not going to get him like an Oscar moment or something like that, right? So I went with Willem Dafoe because like Poor Things, people seem to really stock is way up on Poor Things. People love Willem Dafoe. He's probably, I don't remember off the top of my head, but he's probably been at least nominated before, if not won.
Yeah, but overdue, potentially in a similar, not quite Annette Bening levels, but
Mm-hmm.
he's been nominated a handful of times, and everyone's always like, "Why isn't he winning?"
Right. So this could be it. I don't know.
Well, Jen, 5 for 5. We are lined up exactly. This is
Whoa.
the first time we did it, but I followed the exact same trajectory of feeling real good about the first four, and then switching in and out. I mean, we're just spoiling future categories left and right, but I had Coleman Domingo in for the Color Purple, thinking like he's be getting a lot of buzz there, but then like we were
There's
saying,
another.
Color Purple, not a lot of talk about it right now. So I took him away, and there's a lot of Poor Things talk, Willem Dafoe talk. So the other person I strongly considered was Dominic Sessa from The Holdovers, the sort of young
I
newcomer
think
who
he's
had,
too new, and
yeah,
he's not a cute little kid like the kid from Minari,
right.
right? Like he's too old to do that, to get that kind of a nomination.
Yeah, that has to be people love The Holdovers. That is the tail nomination of
Yeah, for
the
sure.
the 10th, 11th, 12th nomination for the movie is him getting
Which
supporting.
I feel like people are sort of divided about Alexander Payne.
Well, yeah,
So in
it's
general,
tough.
not even just that has him as a person, but just his work. You know what I mean?
True.
Um, so I think that's less likely than some of these other scenarios.
Agreed.
Um, yeah,
And then we still have much of the rest of the cast of Oppenheimer, who are men and who are supporting
I
and
think they're
do a
all
good job.
canceling each other out. That's
But
the other
I
story.
think Matt Damon would be the potential, like you're saying, of like could he push his way up? But I think it's like everyone really focusing quickly on Robert Downey Jr. So it makes sense that he will get the focus, he'll get the
Right.
momentum.
I have mentioned before that Jeremy Allen White may get an Emmys bump, depending on the timing of when the Emmys and the Oscars are, which is
Up in the air.
unusual because of the strike, right? The
Yes.
Emmys got moved to January, so like there's the scenario, and I'm not taking credit for this. Awards Watch came up with this idea, but there's a scenario in which if Iron Claw is really good, um, then he gets and then he wins an Emmy for The Bear right before nominations close. That somehow that gets him the sort of Dallas Buyers Club True Detective bump. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. All right, that was actually less exciting than I thought it would be
I
because
know. Well, I mean,
because we agreed too much.
I know we're just really in line with each other. And I will just note in the saying, yes, there are times when supporting categories frequently, at least in the last few years, have had multiple nominations from the same movie. The last big Yorgos Lanthimos Oscar player, The Favorite, had a lead actress nomination and then 2 nominations in Best Supporting Actress. So
That's
that
right.
could be a similar situation here.
Hmm.
Spoiler for an upcoming category.
Sure. Okay, so Best Actress. Is it your turn? I thought it was
Sure, it could be my turn. And since I was just spoiling it, Emma Stone for Poor Things has been discussed as even the people who didn't like the movie, or not. I guess no one has said they don't like the movie, but there are people who say this movie is too much for the Academy. This will not be successful in the gamesmanship of it all. But that Emma Stone's performance is absolutely undeniable, and she's transcendent, and it's so good that she 100% deserves a second award and will march across the field of battle that is the gauntlet of movie awards and be victorious, which sounds great, but that also was what people said about Kate Blanchett last year, and it got derailed and it didn't happen. But yeah, Emma Stone seems like is a lock for a nomination. And then I had Sandra Hüller only here for Anatomy of a Fall. Everyone says that she's absolutely incredible. And again, because I didn't really spend too much time considering her for Zone of Interest, I kind of think that the bump from Zone of Interest will be like, well, we got to award her this year. That will give her even more momentum. So I kind of feel like she's easy to slot in second place. And then I guess I know we're not doing it in places, but I'm just thinking through it right now. Annette Bening for Naiad, as sort of alluded to when I was discussing Jodie Foster, she is overdue. People have been wanting her to have an Oscar. She's not quite at the Glenn Close level, but I feel like if Glenn Close had won for The
Right,
Wife a
she'd be
couple
next
years
in
ago,
line.
yeah, Annette Bening would become the new person where it's just like, what is happening with Annette Bening? So I think that like she's gonna get nominated. It has the problem of the movie not being good, but again, people didn't like The Whale, and the lead ended up being the
Sure.
sort of front runner that was around the whole time and got over the hump at the end. I think it's going to be a big question whether or not she can campaign, because this is a Netflix movie. Netflix is absolutely the last distribution studio that will get any sort of an exemption. A24,
Right.
Neon, individual productions have been able to get exemptions to have actors and writers campaign and do promotion. No, the guilds will not do that with Netflix. Netflix is like the problem. If anyone is the central problem. So if Annette Bening is not able to campaign, she's certainly not going to win and potentially wouldn't get
Right.
nominated.
It would it would need a Glenn Close type effort.
I think so.
Which when Glenn Close has done that hasn't even worked. So I don't
Or
know.
maybe a Jamie Lee Curtis effort where it's is out there, it is
Oh sure,
talking
yeah.
things up and all that.
Right.
So I do think
Can I
the
sidebar about the strike for a second?
oh absolutely 100.
Yeah,
percent
so I was listening to IndieWire had a live podcast at TIFF, and they were interviewing. I feel bad I'm not because I didn't plan to talk about this, so I didn't write down his name. But one of the main lawyers who's a negotiator for SAG-AFTRA, and his whole thing was, let me clarify the deal with these interim agreements. And he said they're not waivers, they're not exemptions. He's like, I know that's the kind of the language that the press has been using, but we want to emphasize that these are studios and distributors that like companies that have agreed to our terms, right? And that it's like, so they are cleared. They're not being struck because they have agreed to these terms. And like, a part of his point I think was to sort of show that like if they can agree to these terms and they think that they're reasonable, why can't bigger companies like Netflix or Disney or Amazon, all those companies, why are they having such a hard time? And so the festival coverage so far has been really interesting because there are so few actors who have these interim agreements, but like weirdly Ferrari is one of them. So like there there was a bunch of TikTok videos that kept popping up on my feed of Adam Driver. Maybe this is sharing too much about me, but like Adam Driver stepping out of a water taxi in Venice.
It's not you, Jen. It's just the algorithm. It's just
Right.
that's
I don't
all.
know. I don't know why it would be giving me those. But so and like I feel like I saw so many because he's like one of the only main like A-list actors who was able to go and do press and stuff like that. And and they were very good. Like he and I think Jessica Chastain also, they were sort of using the fact that they could go to and promote their movies as a way to sort of like talk about the strike and all kind of stuff. So that was great. But I would say I would recommend checking it out because it's sort of like direct from SAG-AFTRA's mouth in terms of like how they're approaching the strike and their reasoning and all kind of stuff. And I thought it was a really good interview.
Nice. What I'll say is if we're here on Strike Corner, if we're here on the picket line, then I would say that the other sort of news bit that stood out to me recently was the state of California passed a bill that workers who are on strike, and this is anyone on strike, not just Hollywood guilds and unions, would be able to collect unemployment, which has not yet been signed by the governor. There's some pressure for him to not do this because people who run companies don't want to encourage people to go on strike, I guess. But there's, if that, assuming that passes or if it's vetoed, the veto is overridden. That will go into effect in January, which is a little ways away, but does sort of mean that if the maybe accidentally stated intention of some of the producers was we'll grind them to dust and have them have to like move out of their homes and we'll basically wait them out. Like we are able to wait until they have absolutely nothing left. That, if they can get to January, they would be able to get on unemployment, which sure, maybe that's not great in terms of a constant income stream, but would be a good sort of boost for them. So I think that shifted things and there was then an announcement like a day later of they're going back to the table. So maybe that will be a positive thing. And I will, make it clear here an hour and a half into, or an hour and 20 minutes into the recording, that when we say things like, oh, it might be bad for Annette Bening if there's still a strike and she can't campaign. Not as bad as people not getting paid for the work they're doing. Doesn't mean they shouldn't be on strike. This is all frivolous, whatever, in the grand scheme of the labor negotiations and labor rights that are being fought for. So, that's not an endorsement of ending the strike or avoiding it, just for the purposes of promoting in an Oscar campaign. So, just to be clear about that for
No,
the listeners who probably already know that we think that way because we say it a lot. But
yeah, we do. That's why I was originally, for time's sake, I was like, let's skip movie news. There's not a ton of strike news anyway. Or like there's no major updates, and we came back to it anyway. That's fine.
We did. It's hard to get away.
No,
just wait till we spend 10 minutes talking about The Bear. So, Best Actress, Emma Stone, poor thing. Sandra Hüller for Anatomy of a Fall. Annette Bening for Nyad. I think Margot Robbie is going to carry through and make it happen for Barbie. I think people are really underestimating how important she is in that movie. What is that?
That's not, well, I prematurely said I'm one of those people because I thought you meant who's like underestimating her ability to get in here. But
no. I mean, I
fully think she deserves to be in here.
Yes,
to be clear.
I mean, it's maybe it's a reach to say that she can go in here, but I think that there's going to be still Barbie momentum, and I think especially if maybe I am banking on, for this whole category, banking on the fact that by the time it gets to voting, people are able to go out and talk about it. Margot Robbie works rooms really well and knows how to get people interested, and what can really remind people, after not really being able to promote the movie, they were out there until right before it came out, but not during the run. I think it could happen. So I've got Margot Robbie in here, and I'm holding firm.
She's got the producer narrative as well, right?
Yes,
because this movie, she pitched this movie to Warner Brothers, told them that it would make $1 billion. It did.
Right. I think, have to get Greta Gerwig to do it. Like, she put all the creatives that the Oscars would like about this together and used her clout to make it happen. So no, it's true. And I'm going to hold firm. They could pull this nomination from my cold dead hands. Greta Lee for Past Lives. So despite all the people that are on the rest of this list who maybe actually have more of a chance at this point of getting in, or at least some of them do, I still have her on there because I want that nomination to happen. And I think that even if that movie sort of is just percolating underground, I agree with what you said earlier, that Past Lives in original screenplay is like where it would likely be rewarded with a nomination, maybe even a win. That if it's like, what if there's like a little more, it would be, well, let's get the Greta Lee in for the actress. And, I will also just say that if they did go with, and this is partially my thinking, but also thinking about the Academy, the other four are white women. It's like, what if we had a person who wasn't a white woman who was nominated? And there are plenty of other women of color who are in the running as well. But I think there is something to, there's a push for diversity, which is good, and that might help Greta Lee.
Yeah, she was my number 5, but I'm very, very nervous. I feel like she's on the precipice of getting booted out of this category. But I didn't have Margot Robbie instead. Otherwise, my picks are the same. But I had Carey Mulligan from Maestro, because I feel like the predominant narrative of that movie, and I agree, like it kind of very quietly premiered at Venice, but then more people, because I think it also went to, I want to say it went to one of the other ones that was in North America. And more people are seeing Maestro. I think people were surprised by how much the movie focused on her character. So that's number 1. So she's like a real, like a genuine lead, not like a category fraud type lead. And that her performance is just like the standout thing. Like, even if you're kind of mediocre on the movie, that she's amazing. So I feel like, and she has a good track record with the Oscars. She got nominated for Promising a Woman, I believe. A lot of people wanted her to win. She didn't. Wait, who? I don't even remember who won that year.
It
Um,
was oh my god, from Nomadland, Frances McDormand,
oh, right. Okay, yeah,
which
that.
was
Yeah,
great, and she was really good in that. But it was also sort of like, are we sure Frances
she
McDormand
has
did
three
it?
Oscars. Right?
Right, and then she got a fourth for the picture for Nomadland because she was
Right.
producer. But
So yeah, so she's my number 4 on here, and then Greta Lee. But I also have Vanessa Kirby question mark, because again, like
oh my god,
Napoleon,
please.
it's like the Bermuda Triangle of Oscar predictions. Like I have no idea what's going on with this movie. But my default right now is that people are generally have cooled on Ridley Scott, which is so sad. Um, but that they that this is going to be sort of, that Napoleon will sort of be like the last duel, where like it will come and go, and people were like, oh, Ridley Scott's still making movies, uh, and that'll be
And
really
then they'll go
sad,
watch it later when it comes on TV and be like, oh wait, this was a
right?
masterpiece.
Because
This
we
is
haven't
actually
even talked
wonderful.
about. Oh, I guess. Oh, wait, maybe we're about to talk about it, but yeah, like, but Napoleon, even if people don't see that movie or something, I feel like Joaquin Phoenix and Vanessa Kirby, and that's a good transition to our next category. And
Yes,
Vanessa Kirby random got a kind of arbitrary nomination for a Netflix movie she was in.
yes, she
Um,
did. I don't remember what it
I don't
was,
remember what the name was.
but she apparently was very good in that movie, and she is very good when
Right,
I've
but
seen her
no,
in
and
things.
it was an example, like no one cared about the movie, but they recognized that she was good in it. So yeah, it's possible.
So that was a good transition. I do just want to throw out a couple. I had Carey Mulligan in my
You're
sort of
gonna
short.
you're gonna undo the transition.
I am, because I want to also just point out Natalie Portman, May December, which
Right.
all the problems of May December. But I did say that I thought Julianne Moore would break through an actress, a supporting actress. Does that mean that then Natalie
Natalie
Portman
Portman,
might get a little bit
possible.
more possibility in there? Greta Lee, watch your back. And then, again, another sort of Bermuda Triangle, Fantasia Barrino for The Color Purple. It's like, what if that's really good and people like it? Or just what if she is a powerhouse performance and the rest of the movie fades away, but that's the undeniable. That could be, instead of Vanessa Kirby and Napoleon, it could be Fantasia Barrino in The Color Purple.
A lot of what
There's
ifs.
also a Ava DuVernay movie that apparently came out like it was on a bunch of like, it was creepy. It's called Origin, and it was creeping in a
Yes,
bunch of like
Ingenue Ellis
lists.
apparently getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, but it came out, and it doesn't have a good sort of like, I know the ratings aggregators are not a good system, but it's like in like 50% or
So
like,
the
2.5
the
out of 5.
the thing I heard from critics, and granted this is secondhand, I haven't seen the movie, so I can't really say for sure, but the consensus sort of seems to be that it's very good, but it is very much like an intellectual exercise more than it is maybe a narrative movie, and that people, so that might be a reason it's not really catching on, because people, it's like it's not accessible enough for a lot of people. But that people are saying that Ingenue Ellis is really good, so that's a possibility. Again, I guess the theme of today is like your movie your movie can just be okay, but if you're
Right.
good, your performance is good in it, you could get an Oscar nomination, because that's really come
The
up a lot
issue
of
is, I
times.
mean, it's interesting because we're being premature here about the Oscar picks, but we've gotten enough information about enough performances that when a movie has been officially released and it's in that kind of like, yeah, it's good, they're pretty good, I don't know, people don't really connect with it. There's already movies that people have connected with that have good performances, and
Sure.
there's movies that people are talking of that are incredible performances, whether you connect with it or not. So
Mm,
it's already sort of like, is there
right.
going to be
It's
enough
filling up.
momentum? Like, it could a Ingenue Ellis, pass Greta Lee when people loved Past Lives and they love Greta Lee's performance. When it's a movie of like, well, yeah, we really like this performance, and the movie is kind of weird, and I don't know if I connect with it. Like, that's, yeah. But wanted to put it out there. I have completely destroyed the transition, the
It's fine.
Napoleon based transition
Best actor.
from Vanessa Kirby to Best
We don't
Actor.
need we don't need no stinking transition. Best actor. So Cillian Murphy is still at the top of my list. I don't know. Change my mind. That's my thing on Oppenheimer right now, is like try to change my mind. and not in the like meme way, but like just like I didn't realize I was referencing that. Not like that, but like, but though maybe I seem like that about this movie to other people. I have Leonardo DiCaprio. I feel like I actually just saw a pull quote the other day with like an ad on social media where it was like Leonardo DiCaprio has never been better, or like Leonardo DiCaprio's career defining performance, like some sort of like superlative crazy statement. So I feel like he's pretty safe in here. Coleman Domingo for a movie called Rustin. So for those of you who don't know, this is Netflix got a lot of movies. They're not going to get any Oscars. I feel like that this is the mistake. This is the mistake we're making right now, is that we have too many Netflix nominations. Anyway, so Coleman Domingo starring in a Netflix film called Rustin. It's a biopic. And so this was the other reason I kind of cooled on Naiad, because I was like, there's not room for both of these movies to get not even just acting nominations. But he's playing a civil rights activist who's openly gay, and it's like the movie is definitely the critics are sort of saying it is sort of a pretty conventionally shot biopic. Like the story, the narrative is not particularly unusual or innovative or anything like that. It's pretty standard biopic stuff. But the fact that it's telling a story about this this person who was a major historical player, but has kind of been lost to history, right? That like so the movie itself sort of serves as like a historical counter narrative to other figures that have become more famous, and so and that he was really important, but that no one remembers him basically. And so that's called Rustin, and people just love him in the movie. They say his like he's very magnetic, charismatic, completely disappears into this role and becomes this other person. So I think if there's room for, to me, there's like room for one biopic like that, and I would rather it be this than Naiad. It's kind of the conclusion I came to. And then I have Paul Giamatti for The Holdovers. I feel like even if people are not that into The Holdovers, they are into the idea of Paul Giamatti, or they are into the idea of Paul Giamatti reuniting with Alexandra Payne, because it's the first movie they've done since Sideways, which everybody loves. So like a lot of there might be a lot of transitive property of people like that Sideways, and now they just want to give Paul Giamatti an Oscar nomination.
All right, Jen, we're 4 for 4. Is it going to happen again? Are we going to do it? Are we going to do it again? I made a change during this episode, so I might have ruined it.
I don't think we will, because based on what your other nominations are, I'm not sure. But I have Bradley Cooper in the last spot.
Okay.
For Maestro. The nose doesn't play, I guess.
Here's what I'll say. When you said there's only space in this for one movie that's just like a standard traditional biopic, I really thought you were going to be like, that's why I didn't pick Bradley Cooper for Maestro. Because that's been the Maestro thing, is this is just a standard biopic that is done really well when it works really well, and then it's kind of boring for a little while and maybe goes on too long. But that, like, it's very Oscar baity, and but whatever. Here's but Oscar bait works too, so Maestro could do well.
That's true. Here's my Bradley Cooper narrative. I think he's not getting into director, but I think people will appreciate his directorial vision in this movie, because I've already heard that from a bunch of critics, that like his point of view, and that he seems to be maturing as a director, as an artist, right? It's like very clearly his movie. And so I feel like a lot of that will get displaced here. Like the directors will be like, we're not going to let you into our club. So then Academy voters are going to be like, but he directed this movie. He's like the whole artistic, vision behind it. Let's give him an acting nomination. That's
which is basically what happened with A Star Is Born.
Yes, it's going to be the same thing all over again, except without the strangely intimate Lady Gaga performance.
Oh my god, but I mean, it was really good. I mean, and then shockingly,
really I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that it was very memorable.
Yes, shockingly, didn't Bradley Cooper and his wife or girlfriend immediately split up afterwards? This is We Need Jasmine for?
Are you making that up?
For Relationship Gossip Corner.
Okay.
Either Lady Gaga's or Bradley Cooper's relationship ended within like 3 weeks of that ceremony happening. So again, we're
not a tabloid podcast.
We need Gossip Corner with
It's not
Jasmine.
TMZ. I'm
Okay,
just
fine.
kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay.
Um,
That's fine. I will just say, as someone who I'm really liking the word faded tonight, but as someone who faded Maestro a lot based on those sort of initial pretty mixed reactions and the Netflix component of it, like that's it. Like I thought Naiad will pick up where Maestro kind of drops the ball.
sure.
That's where I was with it. I think whatever. So, but I think to defend what you are saying, it's easy to kind of forget Bradley Cooper is in that Amy Adams category of like only been like doing this for like a decade or so. I mean, Amy Adams maybe got a little bit longer, but like he's had 9 nominations and hasn't won anything, which is partly because he got a bunch of nominations for A Star Is Born. He has a production company that did Joker and Nightmare Alley, and so we got nominations there. But he's like he's got a he's due narrative for someone that we don't think of as being all that old. And
Right.
but he also did, was a jobber for a long time before he broke through in the early 2010s. So, I think there's definitely the Bradley Cooper reward narrative that at least gets him to the nomination, even though I did not pick him for this last thing. He's obviously on the backup list. I'm just gonna tell you who's not there. Andrew Scott, all of us strangers, is supposed to be incredible. Hot Priest / Moriarty did apparently an amazing job in this movie. People are saying he's incredible. Never count out Anthony Hopkins, who's creeping with Freud's Last Session.
And that's a Sony Pictures classic movie.
It's true.
So it might be the father all over again.
Yeah, he can make his way in there, and I don't know. I don't even know if there is actual chatter about it, or if people are just thinking he's probably very good.
I have heard not that many critics I follow have seen it, but the ones who have say that the movie is pretty forgettable, but that he's very good in it, and it's sort of like a crowd pleasing tearjerker kind of movie.
Interesting.
So
that feels like he could have. Yeah, he could have gotten it, but if he hadn't recently won a second Oscar at the expense of a recently deceased, very, very famous person who.
Yeah, I was gonna say people might still be salty about that. So
I think so. Like it's sort of like, okay, Anthony, you got it. Like you got yours. It's fine. I had and then switched out at the last second based on the conversation Jenna sold me on the Saltburn negativity. So I had Barry Keoghan as he's the up and coming star. He's the one that people are really into. Any other year, he would have won last year, I think, for Banshees. I think that, if he didn't have Ke Kwong the Impossible Force, that's the Lily Gladstone parallel, actually. I think that's the one where people are like, oh, he's just been there. He's been here the whole time, just sitting.
Not going anywhere.
Yep. Yeah, he's on the corner. His name is his name. He'll just be there the whole time. But, would he get rewarded for this movie? And I heard people say he's really great in it. But like you said, I don't know. So I switched last minute to Jeffrey Wright in the mysterious American Fiction that I don't really know anything about, besides the fact that the hype has been strong for the last week or two, that people are saying it's incredible and that he's incredible. This is a makeup nomination for The French Dispatch, of course, as we all know. That's a nomination he should have had before. And, has he ever been nominated?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. And he's great. And why wouldn't we want him?
He's done a lot of TV, I think, is maybe why he has not got. What I mean? Like, I think he only recently started having bigger roles in movies. I could be wrong about that, but that's my not based on any facts.
He did win an Emmy for his role in Angels in America, the miniseries. Okay. But that's an Emmy, yeah. And he won it for the play as well. I think playing the same role. But in any event, yes, he's overdue. He's overdue.
I just wrote down PT says Jeffrey Wright, and I don't think that's wrong. So,
bam. So yeah, but I mean,
I think I changed I swapped out something earlier for American Fiction, right? Probably the screenplay, right? Yeah. And I probably just didn't make it that far in this list.
Yeah.
To update it.
No, that's fair. Shout out to Teo Yu for Past Lives, who doesn't have any momentum, but I even he might show up on mine when
I had John
it's
McGurrow in supporting and had to take him out because I'm
yeah,
like, I think Past Lives is just dropping off. I don't
yeah,
like it, but it's a thing.
it's thing. Yeah, but I mean, all accounts are that Rustin is only okay, but Coleman Domingo is supposed to be so good in it that it sort of feels like I don't want to make this it's about a black historical figure in America, but I feel like the lead actress nomination for Harriet was sort of a similar like we don't know how much we cared about this movie, but you know what? Like this like Harriet did a great job, so we're going to give that nomination. And I think Coleman Domingo might be in a similar like without campaigning, without Netflix having to support it too much. It'll be on everyone's television because they have Netflix. They can check it out and they can see like, yes, he's doing a really good job. And then Murphy, DiCaprio, and Giamatti seem pretty locked in at this point. So yeah, I'm with you on that. How about Best Director?
Oh, this was hard. Okay, so here's my like meta context about this. The recent trend is there's always one rando European director. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't mean rando as in like they don't deserve to be there or like, but it's like the one that people are like, oh really? Okay. Like didn't
And
see
and
that
and the
coming.
and the question is Jonathan Glazer random enough to be the
No,
random European director, or do we need
that's the thing.
another one?
He's the this is the you've cut to the quick. This is the crisis I'm having because Jonathan Glazer so Jonathan Glazer is the director of Zone of Interest for those of you who aren't like keyed into this like we are, which I keep forgetting. So, and we also haven't just explained what a lot of these movies are about. So we're really doing a bad job of upselling these movies to people. Just as a note for
True.
future episodes,
It's a great point.
because like we all know what they're about. Like we've read the Wikipedia pages for all these movies, but no one else has. So, Jonathan Glazer, director of the Zone of Interest, this soul crushing but artistically amazing adaptation of Martin Amis novel about Nazi Germany. Or not
Banality
Nazi
of Evil.
Germany. Sorry, yeah, it's a
Nazis
Nazi family living
in
adjacent
Poland, right?
to isn't it? It's Auschwitz, right? Which is
I
not
think it's
actually
Auschwitz. Yeah,
okay. Um, and
fun.
so that's going to be counted as an international feature, and it's likely going to get a nomination in an international feature. But people are liking it enough that it could pop up in a bunch of other places. But he's British, but the production is considered Polish and German and British, possibly. I
Yes.
feel like we talked about this before, and I don't remember what we said, but because we did look it up.
Yeah, that's what it's listed as. It's listed as a
And so I
Poland
don't think he
German.
checks. I don't think he like only sort of checks the European box
Right.
to me.
Now, what about Yorgos Lanthimos, who's also European?
That's the thing, but
Is that
that's not.
enough? It wasn't enough for me. I'm just gonna put it
That
out
movie.
there.
Oh, you didn't put him on here?
No,
Sorry, what?
no, they're both on there, but that wasn't enough for the weirdo European
Right,
checkbox. That's what I'm
right,
saying.
because he is. I mean, you can tell by his name he's Greek,
Yeah.
right? And I didn't want to just assume that. I guess, uh, or I want to feel like I read that somewhere. But he's Greek. But the poor things and most of his movies are in English, right? So he does not like Poor Things does not count as an international feature. So can he himself is international? His movies are not really. So I don't know if he checks that box. So for context, when I say recent trend, last year my big Oscar prediction winning moment was I correctly predicted Ruben Östlund for Triangle of Sadness in Best Director, which not a lot of people had on their predictions lists right before nominations came out. And that was my logic was, okay, who's going to be like the director of Cold War also, and then just every year there's been one international, someone who's nominated, usually the front runner in an international feature, that director gets nominated here. I thought about Justin Trier as checking this box for Anatomy of a Fall. She's actually French. That movie is partially in English, but also in French and German potentially.
I will give it away. That's my choice.
Okay.
She was my fifth slotted in.
But here's why I ended up backing off from that. It's because she's a woman.
Yeah, that's tough.
And Greta Gerwig, I feel like because she's like the Tom Cruise of this year, although he didn't get nominated either. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if I could use it as a comparison, but like she's gonna get the thanks for making us lots of money bump. And the Academy already likes her. Like she's got nominated for Little Women, for not bet I can't remember now. She did get nominated for director for
She
Luna,
got nominated but didn't win.
but didn't win. Yeah, so like she has a track. Like she's gotten into this category before, and even when she wasn't making billions of dollars. So like, I feel like there's not room because the Directors Guild is not going to nominate 2 women. I don't know. That's sad. But
Sorry,
that's
she was nominated Best Director for Lady Bird, not for Little Women.
Oh, not for Little Women. Okay, but she got a screenplay for.
She got screenplay nomination for both.
Women.
Yeah.
Okay.
No wins though, which is wild.
So, and I feel like Barbie is so much more mainstream than Lady Bird. So, I feel like I feel pretty good about putting her in at this point. And I'm like, I don't think there's room for another female director, which again is a huge problem that I have to use that kind of logic
again,
make my predictions.
Not predicting what should happen, just predicting what we think will happen. Yeah, I went the opposite of that, which was I had Greta at 5, and then I was like, but is there enough of a wild card here? And I put Justine Triet in,
and that does make more sense.
Anatomy of a Fall, and then I assume we have the same other 2 from 2 of the other 3 bigs.
Yeah, I have Scorsese and Nolan.
Right. Same.
Yeah, so I have Scorsese for Killers of the Flower Moon, Nolan for Oppenheimer, Jonathan Glazer for Zone of Interest, Greta Gerwig for Barbie, Yorgos Lanthimos for Poor Things.
Yeah.
And I'm not happy about it from a prediction standpoint. This doesn't feel...
Oh, I see. You feel like it doesn't have the wild card weirdness in it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean... I feel similar in that, like, I have my wild card, but then I'm like, are they really going to screw over Greta Gerwig? And also...
You're on the other side of my argument.
Right. And also, wouldn't there be some level of thinking of people being like, what if we nominated 2 women? Like, we could do 2 women this year. Maybe we could then go like 3 or 4 years with no women, and that would be fine. Because we had that one year with 2. So hopefully they're not thinking that way, but who knows? These wacky Academy voters. But I kind of feel like, I mean, it's supposed to be a triumph and it's supposed to be so well done. But I think that I would think Jonathan Glazer would drop out before Justine Triet from my list, just because that movie just might be too heavy.
Right.
I think that like a lot of people loved Under the Skin when it came out. I don't think that people were like, Under the Skin, it's going to get all these awards, which was his last movie, which was a very strange sci-fi movie starring Scarlett Johansson. I don't think that there was a lot of hype for that, but I could see this being a movie that just crashes against the weight. I know that movies about World War II and movies about the Holocaust tend to get a lot of support and attention, but this one might be too bleak and too brutal. So I think that if I were to say I got to revise this because I think Gerwig has to be in, I would replace Glazer before Trier. But maybe Anatomy of a Fall comes out and is just sort of those weird French people picked this movie for Cannes, and we don't know anything about that. But it's supposed to be incredible, and the trailer for that one, which I have seen before Jen quizzes me, looks amazing, and I'm very excited to see that movie in, I think, under a month. It comes out in about a month.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. That's exciting.
Honorable mentions that you think are worth mentioning.
I think Celine Song should be in here, but she's not going to be.
Agreed.
I have written down, if another woman is getting in, it's Justin Tree.
Nice.
So she's third in line, and it's just not going to happen. Yeah.
I deeply appreciate that you write like full sentence notes, whereas I just write lists of things and then hope that I remember.
Well, I have to remember my rationale. Like I need support. I need support for my arguments.
This is why Jen's better at this than I am, folks in the audience.
I had Alexander Payne is possible.
Yeah, I mean, if the holdovers really pushes forward, there could be the Payne's only ever one screenplay. You know, he doesn't have a director.
Actually, the next sentence is that movie feels more like a screenplay win. So at least we're in tune on that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I couldn't think of, so here's the thing: the Directors Guild has a reputation of being a little snotty, and they really love auteurs, big names. So that's why I feel like, I don't know, a lot of these I don't think are going anywhere.
Yeah,
especially Scorsese and Nolan. I feel like they're locks.
Right, and I think the thing is you have like every non-Lily Gladstone name from Killers of the Flower Moon that we've put out there, including, we didn't name Roth as the screenwriter. But everyone's won. They've all won. Oscar, DiCaprio, De Niro, Scorsese have won before. But there is a little degree of like, don't they deserve another? And if the movie's really good, it's like this could be like, yes, this is a pinnacle. This is an achievement, late career achievement for De Niro and Scorsese, and the next stage of DiCaprio's career, perhaps. And he won. He won for The Revenant after a long time of waiting, Bradley Cooper style. But was it, is that enough? And also, like, who thinks about The Revenant? Like, maybe he needs another movie that, like, we actually feel really good about. So I think that, there is that argument for Scorsese. That's there. The Christopher Nolan argument is never won, nominated, not even that often, I don't think. I think Inception, I actually don't know. I know he's gotten some screenplay nominations. Memento, I think, and Inception
Interstellar
both got nominated. Maybe, but still, there is a sort of, he is maybe the biggest brand name director,
sure,
the biggest youngest brand name director. That in
and
terms
he sort of straddles the auteur block, but like mainstream.
Yeah, but like he opens. Well. Yeah, you open a movie on his name, like that's. And I think there is some degree of okay, that's good, but I think there's also some degree of they don't particularly like him enough. It was Dunkirk was the other one.
Right.
So it's Dunkirk, Inception, and then he got, which was both director and picture, and then screenplay for Memento, which is a great nomination. But so I think that the thing with Nolan he's had all these chances, he's very big, maybe he's overdue, combined with Martin Scorsese, he's very old, he's won before, but maybe we got to give it to him again, has really pushed out both Ridley Scott and Michael Mann, who could very easily have the sort of combination of those of like, they're very old, they're both in their 80s.
Right.
They've never won.
I'm just not confident enough in those movies.
Right.
To feel like they should be in here at this point, right? Obviously, they haven't come out yet, so
yeah. It doesn't sound like
people have seen Ferrari; they're not going nuts over it. So
that's exactly. I was going to say, it doesn't sound like Ferrari has
the
momentum, as it were. Yeah. And again, the black box of Napoleon. Who knows? I would adore it for reasons we'll get to.
Like, we're locking this movie down
for reasons we'll get to in like 10 to 15 minutes. I would love for Napoleon to be very successful.
Okay. How about we get to it now? I think
we got to do Best Picture, and then we'll do the draft.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. I thought.
But anyway, we'll go to picture.
So, how do we want to do this? We'll just list them. We're almost at the 2-hour mark, and I actually forgot about the intro that we had to start over the recording, so it's actually more than 2 hours. If we include that.
No, but we only recorded for like 4 minutes.
Oh, okay. So, sure. And
hopefully, maybe you'll forget to cut this part out, and the people will realize that we screwed up the intro, or I screwed up the intro.
That's okay. No, the internet screwed up the intro. Anyway, I'm definitely cutting this out now. We're talking about too long.
Fine.
Okay. Best Picture. Here's my list. I'm just gonna go down the list from most confident to least confident. That's more. It's not quite exactly keyed in that way, but I think it's mostly.
I like it.
Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, Poor Things. Those are the three that we keep talking about.
Yep.
Barbie gets in. That was more of a question before Dune got pushed, but I think it can very easily take the sort of Top Gun Maverick, Avatar: Way of Water sort of mainstream blockbuster spot. Anatomy of a Fall. Zone of Interest, which I really struggled. I was like, can both of these get in here? But I think it's they're only sort of international in different ways. And so I feel like because of that, and because they've been so consistently well received since they premiered at Cannes and won those awards, right? Like, I think they just kind of have kept in the conversation really strongly. So for now, I'm keeping them both in. As things change over time, I may have to take one out. The Holdovers, Past Lives, though that probably, based on our conversation today, probably should be further down. Maestro, and then, because I do think, like, there's a phrase that Oscar pundits use called your Oscar puzzle, where, like, not only can you have to have an argument for why something's getting nominated in an individual category, but then you also kind of have to zoom out and be like, okay, well, how many nominations is this movie getting? And if it's getting this many nominations, why isn't it in my list for Best Picture, and vice versa, right? Like, it's hard to justify having a movie in Best Picture if it doesn't have a bunch of major nominations in other categories. So for that reason, I feel like I said Maestro enough times that I feel like it's, for now at least, it should be in here. And then my last spot, I don't know. Um, and I feel like typically the end of the list goes smaller. So last year, like Women Talking, Triangle of Sadness, like those ones like sort of snuck in. People weren't sure if they were going to make it in. Especially Women Talking. People were like, wow, Women Talking.
Hey, all right.
It got in. I didn't think that would happen. So right now, because again, it's got that surprise momentum, I have American Fiction. And I feel like I would, if I were to do this, update this right afterwards, after we stop recording, I would probably swap out Jeffrey Wright for Bradley Cooper like you did. And then from an Oscar puzzle perspective, that makes sense. Where if it has a screenplay, it has an acting, it could get into Best Picture. But I feel like Air, if it is the sleeper wild card, and if it gets in screenplay, but then somewhere else, like if weirdly Viola Davis gets nominated for supporting actress or something weird like that, and it's like it becomes a thing, then it could get in here. All of Us Strangers, that's the one I was like, wait, shouldn't I have this somewhere? Because it has gotten so much buzz. But I also feel like it's like the Women Talking. It's a very small movie, very intimate movie, and so there aren't that many spots for that in Best Picture. And I can't think of where it would get, unless Andrew Scott gets in for Best Actor, unless it gets a screenplay. And I didn't have it in any of those places. So I can't really, right now with my current predictions list, I can't really justify it in Best Picture. But I feel like if I were to change some other predictions, it could be.
Yeah, I almost fully agree. We're 9 of 10 together. I do have Maestro in at Best Picture, despite my Maestro fade.
Yeah,
I feel like Netflix is going to be in shambles, basically, and that they're going to be pushing Maestro. I kind of think Maestro stumbles a little, but they're like, we've pot committed to this. We got to just keep going. So Maestro.
And again, I feel like if they can have an actor-driven campaign, if the strike ends,
yes, that might make it.
That would push it over the edge for sure. Like if we can get Bradley Cooper on the campaign circuit.
But I feel like there's some. I mean, to go back, there's some technical components to it that, we were joking. The nose doesn't play. I kind of feel like a makeup nomination is still kind of there, just because it's so prominent. Plus, it is possible. I had them right underneath screenplay, Carey Mulligan, Bradley Cooper acting. So I had that in for Best Picture. My sort of sneaking in last minute was Past Lives. That's sort of like the small movie there at the end. And I, again, sort of like maybe just holding on to old momentum. I had The Color Purple as 9 and then Past Lives.
I made a very distinct decision to be like, Color Purple is out.
Fair.
A lot of my decisions based on that. So that if that's wrong, then I have to go back and change a lot of stuff.
Well, I do still think that like sound and song and maybe even score could get Color Purple like a few little like sub nominations, which means that like that might be enough. And then again, like it could pop. But yeah, I mean, again, we're in the zone of what's the reaction to things. Like what if people are like, actually no, we don't care about the Italian accents, we love Ferrari, or Napoleon's actually really great.
It's true. The Formula One crowd could really come out and support.
We actually think that stories of teachers marrying their underage students is good. We want to see May December.
I can't believe that you pointed out that there's a total double standard between Priscilla and May December, and you're absolutely right. It's like it's okay if Elvis robs the cradle, but it's not okay if Julianne Moore does.
But I mean, I think that part of the Priscilla narrative is that this was not okay. Like this is actually, this movie is about how you kind of
it's based on Priscilla Presley's memoir.
Yeah, but I thought I heard that like they don't shy away from they don't necessarily like make it a moralizing tale, but it's also like
she has been on a press tour being like Elvis was very like Elvis didn't do what you thought he did. He was very
I guess maybe I'm thinking of I'm thinking of seeing people talking not having seen the movie, but talking about having read her biography that the script is based on, and saying like all these stories were presented as fun and or happy memories that are just very clearly stories of grooming and abuse.
Oh no.
That like, you know, that is like, oh, context free, like you can see that, but like this person clearly thinks this was all a good thing. And like that's, I don't know if that's going to carry forward. You know, I did have Priscilla on my longish list of additional possible movies, along with The Boy and the Heron and Across the Spider Verse. Like, who knows? Some animated one.
No, no.
Okay,
Don't get my hopes up.
all right.
I
And
don't there's no evidence in Oscars history to show that, and no matter how acclaimed they are, that animated features are gonna, other than like there was a period where like Beauty and the Beast,
and the Pixar,
Toy
couple Pixar
Story,
movies.
yeah, but we're that's over. That time is over.
But you know what, Jen? Nothing happens until the first time it happens.
Sure, that's true. I'm just saying, the evidence is not in favor of this prediction.
Fair.
I would love that for to be the
I know.
case. I'm protecting.
I would just love the movie to be excellent. And that's not just because of the next thing I wanted to talk about, which was looking back at our anticipated movies draft that we did back in March, I think, March or April. We did a very early
Yeah, it was at the beginning of the year,
hype,
sort of.
yeah, beginning post the last Oscars of what were the movies we were most thinking of. We went back and forth and each selected a movie and drafted it. And how are you feeling about your team these days, Jen?
It's rough. It's rough out here. So I had Dune 2. That's not even in the running now.
That's
I had Across the Spider-Verse, which, see our conversation from 3 seconds ago. I mean, but it is going to do well in animated feature.
And you like the movie. I mean, the movie was good.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's true. So you can't get me out of Oscar pundit mode.
I know.
It's
That's
really hard.
You're really locked in.
And then right, but so yeah, that was great. I'm glad I picked that, Across the Spider-Verse. Yeah, sorry, my brain is now switching over into I like movies. Who'd have thunk? Not like cynical Oscar prediction mindset. I mean, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, I enjoyed that movie a lot, but I think largely it was underperformed, just with critics and fans and at the box office. Yeah, Greg.
I mean,
Greg is the one single-handedly supporting that movie financially.
That's true. I mean,
how many times he's seen it.
He has. I think he has a share of it now. I think he's got a point on the back end. I will just say, in the end, the critics and fans, I feel like we're pretty okay with it. It didn't blow people away.
Yeah, sure.
But I don't think it was that bad. I will also say
it's not winning the summer.
No, I will say though
that I thought it would.
Yeah, that would have been fun. Dune Part 2 moving, I think, does open the door for a John Williams score nomination. Because that's a locked-in nomination for Zimmer is taken out, and that could be a Williams opening. I like
it. Yeah. The Killer, which, as I said, it's still on track to being a good movie. So I'm still saying I'm excited. I'm still excited for that movie. I saw the trailer. Michael Fassbender in a bucket hat. I'm here for it. Like, I think I misunderstood. I thought the killer meant serial killer initially, but he's actually a contract killer.
Yeah,
like he's a hitman, and so it's very much a like I'm a detached professional assassin, and something goes wrong, and now I have to like do all these other things. So, which sounds great. That sounds fun.
It's interesting. The description of the plot and the way the character is presented sounds like it was David Fincher making a Michael Mann movie, and that sounds fun to me.
That does sound fun. Yeah. So I'm excited for it, even if it doesn't have Oscar potential. And Saltburn, as we said, that's a tough beat from an awards perspective, I think, potentially, unless it has some kind of groundswell of support. As Promising Young Woman sort of did at some point during the Oscar season that year. But I'm still excited for it. I mean, we just saw The Talented Mr. Ripley. The Big Picture hosted a screening of it. I had never seen it before somehow. This very much seems like Saltburn seems like a successor to The Talented Mr. Ripley. Emerald Fennell has said, that she's sort of traumatized by her experience going to Oxford, and this movie is very much like trying to like work through some of those issues because it's two characters. Jacob Elordi plays sort of like what's the word I'm looking for?
Aristocrat.
Yeah, really like a British aristocrat whose family owns this estate called Saltburn, and or at least I think that's what it is. And then he befriends at school Barry Keoghan's character, who is from a not from a well-to-do family. Like he's like, you know, his background is class-wise from a very different place, and so the he gets asked, like Jacob Elordi asks Barry Keoghan's character to go stay probably for the summer or something like that at Saltburn, this like crazy fancy estate in England, and chaos ensues, I think is the it's the correct tagline after that. But in a very talented, like people have said, the it's descending from Talented Mr. Ripley very pretty clearly, but that it's also kind of just like a wild ride. So like I'm still very interested in that movie. I'm not as high on it in anticipation because of the critical reception was kind of mixed.
Saltburn could have a bounce back, actually, just because it seems like the kind of movie that maybe doesn't appeal particularly to critics, and that they might be particularly harsh on it. They may have that. This is like Talented Mr. Ripley, but not as strong. Maybe. And then when it gets out, people are like, actually, this is great. And the acting is really good.
But your team, with maybe one exception.
1.5 exceptions, maybe. It depends. It's certainly in terms of like award conversation. So, confounding experts, and frankly, even myself, I did take Killers of the Flower Moon first, which Jen, I don't think has forgiven me yet, especially now that Dune Part 2 was delayed. So
I'm just mad at myself. That's all.
she feels like I set her up. Maybe I don't know. She's never said that. I'm making that up entirely. But Killers of the Flower Moon, we're on track here. You know, I'm putting them in. You know, I'm just trying to coach them up, put them in the best position to win. And so far, so good. Very excited to see the movie. Past Lives, adored here at the Long Take Review across the board. What a masterpiece. What an excellent movie. Will it actually get Academy Award nominations? We don't know. Also, a very painful potential this had Oscar buzz episode a year or two down the line, because that would be a disaster. But
I don't want to even contemplate that.
I know. But incredible movie, and is, been ensconced at my number one spot for the whole, since I saw it for the most of the year, and or at least since the beginning of the summer. And I don't know how it's not going to end up at least in the top 5. It would be an amazing year if there are enough movies that could bounce it down from there. Then was Napoleon, which we've discussed all episode. You may have noticed my self-interest slipping in, where I'm just like, what about Napoleon? It could be a
dark horse, because on paper it does feel very Oscar baity, and it's Ridley Scott, who both a director we both enjoy. So
we both enjoy. I feel pretty good that I'll like the movie. The trailer is very fun. I went to the local my local theater, the Alamo Drafthouse, to watch Dr. Strangelove, an old Stanley Kubrick movie, Killers of the Flower Moon trailer, Napoleon trailer, and there was one other, and now I can't remember what it was. There was another big Oscar movie, and I was just like, yes, feed me these future Oscar movies. And the Napoleon trailer looks great on the big screen, and it looks like it'll be very exciting. Could come and go, could very much be a Last Duel, which is a movie I really enjoyed, but just sort of immediately faded away. But it'll be interesting. We'll see how it goes. I feel like the killer for you and Napoleon for me are sort of similar. Like, I know you've got some killer reviews, but we still feel pretty good. We're going to like it, but we don't know how good it's going to be and what the awards play will be. And it could very easily, cash out with nothing. My 4th movie was The Boy and the Heron, the Miyazaki movie.
I don't know how I let this happen.
We were during the draft, you were saying like, there's a movie on the board. We both kind of want it. And I was like, I'll leave it for you, because I think it's more your thing. And you were thinking Indiana Jones. And so you took it, and that was great. But then I was like, well, I think I have to take The Boy and the Heron then. So I
out strategized myself. It's like,
well,
I just assumed The Boy and the Heron would be there.
If you want to talk out strategizing yourself, I will say my fifth movie was Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part One, all punctuation included, which was a super fun time. Not as good as the last trilogy of movies, the 4, 5, and 6 in the series, but real solid. I didn't go see it again in the theater. I kept kicking around the idea of doing it, but I'm very excited to get it when it's available at home, watching it again in the background multiple times. But I did go back and listen to the recording to see if my notes lined up with my thinking. I had two movies that were up underneath Killers of the Flower Moon and Past Lives. I skipped all of them. The top one of those, which I did name right after I took Mission Impossible, was Poor Things. So I was right there. I had it slotted at number 3, but I was like, I don't think it's coming out this year. I thought it was going to be out. It was going to be held back for 2024. So I didn't take it, but I would be in easy street if I had taken that one. I would be feeling really good.
So I think the most egregious thing for both of us is that neither of us had Barbie.
Correct.
And neither of us had Oppenheimer.
Did we discuss that we didn't pick either of those? I feel like I remember finishing the draft being like, we both intentionally held back from those two movies because they were
right. Because I think
kind
we
of
just
hyped.
weren't sure. We weren't sure.
Yeah,
we're like, they're getting a lot of hype, but we're not sure. So
right. And it was still early enough that like there was like conceptual hype, but we hadn't really seen a lot from either of them. And there was a part of me that was like, is this going to be more Interstellar or Tenet, which I was iffy on for Nolan? I don't know. I didn't know he was doing maybe his masterpiece. Like that's, that is on us. We should have seen that, or at least had
that's
them
the hindsight is 2020.
Yeah,
thing.
we should have at least had them more on the radar. But yeah, that's a disaster.
We whiffed on Barbenheimer. It's fine.
That's okay. But okay, right now, Premature, less premature than before. I do feel pretty good. I feel like you took some bad beats in terms of release dates and initial reactions. But you know what? Plenty of game left to play. I feel like there's a lot of possibilities for you to snake some good positions here. I don't want Killers of the Flower Moon to end up in the Irishman Fableman's territory, but it's very possible.
Oof, yeah. I mean, I just want it to be good. I don't need
I do too.
I don't need it to win tons of Oscars necessarily. I just want it to be good.
We're so deep into this, and Jen really wants to stop, I can tell, but I will just note for the viewer, the listeners who may not know, I'm slowly trying to work my way through the Sight and Sound Top 100. I'm doing the best I can to see as many of those movies in the theater as possible. I'm trying-ish. I'm not going to every single possible screening, but when I can, I'll go, even if it's a movie I've already seen. So all that's a lead up to say I went and saw Goodfellas at one of the rep theaters nearby, Vidiots in Eagle Rock. And it obviously incredible movie, great screening, great theater, highly recommended. And it's just so good. And when Scorsese's flying, he's incredible. And the sort of talk of, you were saying it's his best movie since X. And, some people are like, best movie since Silence, best movie since The Departed, not going that far back. But there are some people who are, it's the best movie since Goodfellas. And if that's true, with all the great movies he's done in between, man, how incredible.
Yeah. Martin Scorsese. Good director.
He's good. He's good at this. He's got a future.
All right. So I think we have given this the full long take treatment.
And then call short
for
take
sure.
Review.
Yep. Where can folks find the long take review on the internet, PT?
Well, they can find us on Instagram at the long take review. They could find us on Threads when I remember to check Threads. We're on there. And they can send us an email at thelongtakereview@gmail.com if they have any questions, they have any requests or suggestions of episodes as we enter what might be a little bit of a dry period before all these movies come out. We've been kind of kicking around some ideas of what we might cover, some smaller movies, some older things. We're going
to have to review all the movies that we just
That's true. About. I guess that was a bigger thought, like in early August when we were initially talking about doing this episode, and now it's taken us like 6 weeks to get them all done. So it's less of an issue, but still, there's going to be potentially a downtime because of the strike in the future. So any thoughts or suggestions or questions, anything along those lines, thelongtakereview@gmail.com.
Great. And you can find me on Instagram and Threads at Sopchai, SOPCHOCKCHAI, and on Letterboxd at Qui-Gon Jinn. And you can also read written reviews of movies or anything Star Wars or Marvel related on thelongtake.substack.com.
And you can hear Jen every week during the run of Ahsoka, the new Star Wars show, on the Coffee with Kenobi podcast, which they've been great episodes with you and Dan and Ross. So make sure to check that out if you like Star Wars and Ahsoka.
I'm just saying that if someone's still listening and they've heard us talk about the Oscars for 2 hours, I don't know. I just didn't want to assume that they would also be interested in Star Wars. Other than Greg, who's listening to this. Hi, Greg.
But here's the thing is if they listened all the way through because they are interested in all of this and they want to hear an hour and a half every week talking about a new Star Wars show, you're required to email us at thelongtakereview@gmail.com because now you're our friend. You've automatically become our friend and we have to hang out.
You're in. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for listening. You can follow The Long Take on Substack at thelongtake.substack.com. Subscribe for free to receive reviews of films with Oscar buzz, as well as new films and series from pop franchises like Star Wars and Marvel.